Yeah, we should be good now.
There we go.
Yeah, we should be good now.
Nice.
Hi,
Yes.
everyone. Oh, God, that was so bad. I'm so sorry for the horribly rocky start. Yeah, I had a lot of tech problems right now, and it's a bit crazy today. For once, we don't have anyone watching right now, but for the benefit of anyone else who might have somehow be sneaking in without the system recognizing you, hi there, everyone. We're going to be talking about card games today. I'm so sorry for once again for the rocky start. I had a lot of tech problems just now. My PC just wasn't working. And today, as everyone can see, we are all on camera. And you can see how horribly fat I've gotten in the last few years since travel restrictions have started. So yes, I'm not joking. All of us have gained weight, me and my girlfriend included. We were just talking about it earlier today. Yes, we are fat with a capital F, not the PH. Anyways. All right, so cool. Anyways, yeah, today with us is Equis from Spiralcast and Jedidiah from Alter Culture Studios. Thank you guys very much for coming back and joining me on this one little thing today. I was just mentioning to Jedi earlier that while trying to figure out what to do for this weekend, I was listening to a podcast that he did with a friend of his, Glenn. And I was hearing about him talking about card games and stuff and going like, oh yeah, I can talk about card games for hours. So in the back of my head just went, you know what? I feel like, taking up that challenge and let's see how long we can go with it. And along the way, Equis has wanted to actually talk to, I've always wanted to talk to Equis about card games as well. We started doing this a little bit and we were bouncing some stuff, and card games came out really, really often. I thought it'd be really fun to actually do a proper segment about card games as well. So here we are today. So yeah, so for the benefit of anyone, anyway, so for the benefit of anyone who's watching, and we're going to be talking about card games and very specifically card game mechanics, like the things that we love and the things that we hate, about aspects of it. Throughout this entire session, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, if you have things that you feel like, hey, you brought up an interesting point, I want to chime in, or I have a thought about that, feel free to drop it in the comments below. This is the first time we're doing, I'm doing one podcast without background music as well, so if you suddenly hear silence, I do apologize for that. It is a technical problem for me, but maybe for some of you guys, it might be a good thing because, yeah, you all been complaining a little bit about the background music, so I do apologize. Anyways, so yeah, and also, yes, as we're going along, I will be swapping the visuals in and out a little bit with visuals from card games whenever we can, just so that if at the end of all this you feel a bit curious and you want to go find out about the card games that we were talking about, you can go out and take a look and maybe perhaps support them, which is great for the industry as a whole. So clap for them too. Okay, so yeah, so oh, by the way, before I really start, Jedi, that's a really nice looking shirt. You're rocking that shirt.
Thank you.
You're rocking that shirt.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyways. Okay, so yeah.
It's made of bamboo.
Really?
Oh, that sounds comfortable.
Yes, bamboo.
Ooh, okay.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Okay,
Anyways,
yeah, sorry.
no problems. I also love the Doraemon behind you also, by the way. So anyway, so yeah, back to the topic at hand. So yeah, I figured one good thing that we should be starting this segment with would be to talk a little bit more about how we define a card game first. This is sort of important partially because if you had swipes, like I don't know about you guys, but I've done Google searches for card games in my free time on the Google Play Store, and they show me a lot of games that aren't really card games. They either give me stuff like poker, sometimes mahjong is included as well for some reason, but there are also a lot of gacha games that actually don't have card game mechanics inside. They're just cards because the gacha mechanic, for some reason, they refer to their characters as cards. So it's led to this sort of for lack of a better term, dilution of the definition of what a card game is.
Talking about this while you were sorting out the tech issues.
Right, really. Okay, cool. Then, yeah.
We were just
yeah, sure. Then I guess don't let me stop you then.
I mean, no. Well, you are asking the question, so I think it's because we had to do a bit of something while you were like poking around your wires. What do we say, Jedi?
So you were. I can remember. So your explanation of like why it's possible they're using cards for these games. Well, we didn't specifically we were not talking about gacha games specifically, but it could be because of the idea that cards at the end of the day are collectible, right? When you think about cards, it's a deck of cards, and so if you have only one card, you think to yourself, well, there must be others to complete the deck, right? As with like poker cards and whatnot. So that could be the main reason why they use cards as a way to frame the collection mechanic of the game. And obviously, I think when we think of card games, most of the time we're more interested in the other aspects besides collecting. So yeah, that's a little bit of what we discussed.
Yeah, I think this is what I was trying to, and I was writing this in the chat. Like the way I think of card games, the way I think about the card games I enjoy, or the ones I best find as a card game, rather than a game that uses cards, is a card game is when the game uses cards as a discrete action or a discrete piece of information that the player can make a tactical decision with.
Could you give an example of that?
And yeah, sure. Like look, look, we'll start with the basics. I think everyone's familiar with Magic. You play a card, it's a spell. You play a card, it's a creature. Like your base level card for Magic is a 1 mana 1/1 creature. If it's rush, you add maybe a color, red. If you grow, you add another color, green, right? But it's the same thing with Hearthstone, like 1 mana 1/1. But it's a tactical action because the tactical action says, I play this card, I will have a board state of a creature or I have a spell that does 2 damage, because that allows me that action of playing the card allows me to impact my win condition. I will creep slowly towards my win condition. And cards then allow me to compartmentalize and segregate these are discrete pieces of information. These are actions I can do to win the game. Right? And that for me is card games. When cards let me do that, when cards break it down to like, this card does 6 attack, this card does 6 attack, this card does 8 attack, but I have to discard a card in the process, then my brain goes into a lot of calculus mode. Slay the Spire type thing. And I'm like, that's a card game. This card, I'm trading damage for health. I'm trading health for damage. I'm trading a turn for 2 card draws. These are tactical actions, and the card represents that piece of information, right? But this isn't to say a game like because we were talking a little bit about it, Deceit and Cards Against Humanity aren't card games, because those cards aren't so much tactical actions, but they help compartmentalize the game, and you do interact with the card more often than not. You're telling stories with those cards, but they're more casual play. They're not technically competitive games.
That's correct. That's what we're looking at.
Yeah. So, when card mechanics allow me to organize my discrete decision making, right, then it works for me as a card mechanic. But it's not a card game until the primary mechanic involves playing the cards against one another.
That's fair. That's fair. Jedi, what about you?
I actually have a question. So do you think that games like poker, for example, is considered a card game based on your definition?
No. Well, depends on people, because I think poker is less of a card game as a whole, and more it's a game that involves it's a game of psychology that involves cards.
But it is a game of deceit,
but
right?
There are psychology, right?
Yeah.
But there are actions. The cards, like, depending on the thing. When I used to play Texas Hold'em. So the river, the flop, these are discrete actions. These are discrete cards that then give you tactical decisions. It's just that the majority of tactical decisions is psychological, not card based, right? It's financial, psychological, or risk based. It's not about like playing a card to gain a tactical advantage. It's about like faking a tick to gain a psychological advantage.
That's interesting. Sorry, Jared.
Oh no! I was just thinking about it because like I remember when I was playing Magic, there was one point when I was like trying to explore and like look into more meta gaming, like more like professional plays and stuff like that. And a few things that they were like talking about is like how really professional players would sometimes would just pick up their pencils as though they were going to take the damage, and then like about to cross out their life bar, but like the instant you do something, they will actually have a card to play. So they're just doing it to bait you to do it into doing that kind of stuff. And I don't know. Like I think to any card game, ultimately you still have that kind of uh, poker-esque skill set behind it, because as long as you have hidden information, you can play that to your advantage to try and sort of sort of lure your opponents into to drop their guard or into a game of chicken, that kind of thing. So I don't know.
I think every game does.
Yeah,
It's
exactly,
not just
exactly.
card games, right?
Correct. So
Any competitive game with physical space will allow
exactly,
this.
exactly.
You play right. Like I'm pretty sure everyone who's watched Queen's Gambit at the time, and I
Yeah,
promise
right.
Jedi not to reference chess, but there was 9 episodes about playing the player, not about playing the game. Sorry, Jedi. But no, I mean it's fair. It's just that I think poker shifts the weight of the player in terms of playing the player as opposed to playing the cards. But there are elements of playing the cards. You do make tactical decisions based on the cards you have. If I get a 3 and a 9, I'm folding. If I get a
Yeah, I
3 of
suppose.
hearts and a 9 of spades, I'm folding. I'm not going to keep the cards unless I'm super confident about my abilities to bluff, which I'm not. Like people who know me, I'm not the most poker face person. I play by other methods.
Okay, so if that's the case, is mahjong a card game?
Interesting one. Could you use card games? Could you turn mahjong into a card game and play it that way?
I do have a card version.
Yeah. It actually exists, by the way. So just if in case anybody's wondering, there is a
Not fun
card
because,
version of mahjong. Yes, that tactile tuck thing is a thing.
Fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's part of the fun.
Or as one of my friends likes to call it, the dead elephant version. Yeah, it's the tactile bit. So the sound is you want to hear the sounds of it clacking together.
Yeah.
But no, if it's not with cards, I don't really consider it a card game. But it is a game in that it provides a lot of discrete actions. It's just that with cards, like with card games, it also comes with things like decks and then you define whether or not it's a collectible card game or a living card game, which I personally prefer. But there are aspects of this. But generally, if it's a card game, it's like you have a deck, you play that deck. That deck affords you some randomization mechanics. Part of the card game is using the cards to play against another deck. Part of the card game is about learning to mitigate your deck draws.
Yeah.
Mahjong
So I think.
doesn't really do that.
Oh, sorry.
No,
Right. I
okay.
kind of want to. I wanted to add on to Leonard's point of discrete actions. Actually, when I think in the Discord chat, I did mention that my initial way of thinking about what kind of card games you want to talk about is based on resource management, right? Card as a resource. But I thought about it a little bit further, and I was thinking more about how it's about the management of information. There is some level of information that you know in your hand, right? And then there's a lot of other information that you do not know. And that's because if you have a deck of cards, you don't know what the top card is, for example. You might know how many cards there are in the deck, but you don't know the order, right? So it's about the management of what you can see and what you cannot see, guessing what's in your opponent's hand. So I don't know. I feel like this might be a way to kind of maybe be a little bit more specific in like the discrete action, like what is it actually interacting with, and I think it's about the information available. Yeah.
In that case, do you consider Slay the Spire a card game?
Yeah, I do, because right. Rude. No, because there is a deck, right? You still you draw 5 cards every turn, most of the time, and then you have to guess what else is in your deck after that, in your next hand. So that it already itself is managing the information.
Disagree with you on this one. I mean, broadly, I don't disagree with you. Then apologies. This is my usual tactic of like disagreeing in detail. I'm not disagreeing in concept. Your concept is fine. I'll disagree in detail. But because I think I although to be fair, I actually like your previous example a bit more in terms of like card game, managing cards as a resource, hand as a resource, or deck as a resource, and managing that appeals to me more than thinking about it as an information game. And maybe that's me. Like I like the idea, and I think both in terms of design or games that I've enjoyed, where that deck is a resource or the card that hand size is a resource, has appealed to me. more often than the information game, because I think information games are a bit broader for games as a whole, especially those that rely on randomization mechanics.
Right.
But the management of that resource is kind of cool.
Right.
And I don't remember. I mean, there was a game I was playing, and it was one of the game I was prototyping where, like, the no, sorry, not even that. It's like Ascension, or those or Dominion. You guys played those games, right?
Mhm.
Where
Yeah, I own them.
yeah,
You
right.
own them.
But yeah,
Yeah.
very quickly, expert players, I want to say like us, right? We void a lot of shit because it's about deck management. Like, we know voiding is way more powerful than buying, because it's about deck. It's about draw efficiency. You don't want to draw the card. You want to draw your powerful cards, but you don't always want to draw your powerful cards. So you need to pad your deck a little, and then the whole game of drafting becomes that. You know, it is a resource management. You don't you're not suddenly you're not guessing so much because I'm gonna draw 7 cards. I already my deck is just 7 cards. I'm just cycling the same 7 cards because the combo. You know.
I think maybe I understand where you're going with this, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I necessarily fully agree with my own statement. I just wanted to maybe capture the poker part a little bit more, because I think most card games inherently all have that poker aspect that is unique to, or maybe it's the most prominent in card games. Because if your opponent has a hand, you are also trying to guess what your opponent's hand might contain. And if your opponent has no hand, then that also means that he has no actions possible, right? So I'm just trying to see, is there a way to incorporate a little bit of that into how we define games?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, because again, I go back to, I think then again something like Ascension, where you you're rarely playing against your opponent's hand. Uh, it's well, at least when I play Ascension, I rarely think about what my opponent's hand is. I'm more manipulating the board for myself, right? But the board is dynamic and it manipulates against you.
Mm.
So you don't have to know specifically what's hand. It almost sometimes doesn't matter. What matters is you have the information of like what faction he's choosing, what faction he's going for, right? And how he's played certain rounds, so that you know the kind of combos and things. He hasn't been voiding cards, but he's been buying a lot of cards, so he's gonna get a lot of padding, right? So you probably have like 1 or 2 turns. Your turns are more efficient. It's the same case, I think, of where State Aspire. You're not playing against a deck of cards. You're playing a deck of cards, but your opponent, the PC, isn't a deck of cards. It is a bunch of numbers on screen, abilities.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I
So
think.
yeah, I remember when I was listening to Jedi's original definition of it, right? One of the big questions I had was about would you consider poker a card game then? Because the definition that Jedi was providing previously was about resource management and stuff like that. Yeah, and it didn't quite sit right in that sense. I think at the heart of it all, card games require that the actual gameplay itself involve randomization. Now, for me, the threshold is there must be a degree of randomization, and the randomization, the focus of it is on the cards. That was the sort of the general ticker for me that I would use to actually just generally classify it. That means it's not the monetization section that you see card games with. So the RPGs all automatically get cut out, you know. But the card games are the central element, and then there is a randomization of those elements while you're playing it inside the game. So that was my internal compass when it comes to defining a card game. So yeah. That covers a lot of traditional card games as well, and it also covers a lot of weird games that use cards, unfortunately. So it does blur the lines a little bit, because like in cases like, say for example, Mysterium, which I don't have an image for, I'm so sorry for that, but like Mysterium plays with a lot of cards, right? And some would say, oh wait, it's kind of like Dixit, isn't it? Then yeah, but Mysterium has so many things going about it that it doesn't feel as much as a card game as it is like as opposed to Dixit, that kind of thing. But even Dixit even like blurs the lines already on its own, And Cards Against Humanity is also like a question mark whether we would really consider it a card game, but it would still fall into into this premise. So yeah, I guess my approach towards it still is a little bit broader. But I think between the three of us, if you take sort of the Venn diagram of our definitions, you get into the heart of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely don't want to be like design the design because I'll be asking you questions like, is it randomization or is it dynamism? Because these
Dude, like, yeah, let's let's not split hairs today, man.
yeah.
I mean, I will say for me, my indicator or my litmus test is always this. If you say you want to play a card game and then you mention a card game and I roll my eyes, that means it's not a card game. So
so for that we need to have a I'm now waiting for the app that like we can go like, is this a card game? And it's all just visual representations of Jedi's facial expressions. It's like definitely a no.
We just plug Jedi. See what the things.
It's like, is this a card game? It's like far end spectrum is just Jedi rolling his eyes.
It's always a bit of a wash.
Yeah. Okay. So we've roughly drawn out the space a little bit. By the way, this is the point where I'm gonna just pause for a short while. I'll just let you guys know one quick thing. So originally I set up this bunch of logos on the side, and the whole intention was that, excuse me, that I would be flipping into those logos from time to time as we talk about it. The problem with it, with me trying to do that, and I tried to do that just like a second ago, was that because we swap and talk about games like almost interchangeably, like we do it so quickly and so fast, it's actually very impractical for me because my PC is actually too slow to do this. It lags too much. I'm actually very surprised how much just putting up images lags my system. So I don't know what's going on. So I'm going to give up on that venture for now. But it is something I wish I could do. But yeah, for now. And if anyone else who's listening and like, hey, I want to know which game is this? Is this the game that you were talking about? Please feel free to reach out to me on the Facebook. We have a Facebook link right there on our chat. Sorry, you can look for us there. You can just reach out to me on Facebook, and I can confirm or deny the game itself. Hopefully, I can post up a list of titles for you to look at, and hopefully, if I have the free time, I'll put in links for the games as well when I repost this video. The chances are really, really slim because that would require me to watch through this entire thing and like name check every game that we list out, which is going to be really, really crazy. So unlikely, but let's hedge our bets on this one, shall we? So yes, for now, no more screen swapping. It'll just be all our faces and maybe a somewhere in between. I'm sorry, I don't want to show my face anymore situation. Okay, now I'm just gonna close a bunch of stuff we won't be doing anymore. Oh god, this thing seriously surprisingly lags up my system. And I spent so much effort onto it too. I'm so sad. Anyways, okay, let's come back to it then. So, we're supposed to be talking about mechanics. We've got a rough idea on how we want to define a card game. So we have this pool of card games that we're going to be starting to talk about. To get us started off, let's go with Jedi first, shall we? Let's go with a mechanic from you that you want to talk about, and you feel like what's your favorite card game mechanic? Let's start with the favorites first.
Ooh, okay. Oh my god. Spot for choice. Oh my god. Oh no. I'm freezing up. Okay. One of my favorite card game mechanics is
drum roll.
I feel like I'm gonna get judged. Okay. One of my favorite card game mechanics is honestly Scry from Magic the Gathering. I just personally love Scry. Yeah.
Any particular reason? It's actually surprisingly simple.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's surprisingly simple,
Mhm.
and that's why I feel like it's been used in so many different games. But it's so simple, yet I feel it's also the way that you scry. There is a very deep thought process in when you are scrying, right? I mean, you are simply putting it at the top or at the bottom of the deck. Sometimes you can even change the order, depending on how many cards you're scrying. And I don't know, I just like how it forces you to think a few turns ahead, and it's not difficult to understand as well. I like mechanics that are easy to understand, easy to comprehend, yet there is a depth to them. And I feel like Scry in that sense is quite elegant and commonplace amongst many card games. Yeah, that's personally
This
for me.
makes sense.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I think it makes sense because Jedi already described that his card game definition involves the management of information, and Scry is a really, really powerful mechanic for that.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Hmm.
I do I actually do like Scry. Actually, one of my favorite cards in Magic at one point was Soothsaying. I don't know whether you know the card.
Mhm. Yep.
Yeah. So it's basically Scry for X, almost. Well, not exactly, but almost. One of the funniest things was that when I was doing my card game last time, I had shit hell trying to put Scry into words for the common folk, so to speak, for the uninitiated. Because I was
Look, no, I don't know.
yeah, but you see, the thing is that you can't use the word look because if you use the word look, um, you people then question whether you're supposed to show it to your other people or not. So you actually are supposed to say specifically um, uh, uh, something, or you have to define when you say something like look, which I can't even remember what I put in the end of the day. I think I gave up on trying to tell.
Writing words.
Correct, and so
I
I,
think
I
that's where Magic has succeeded.
correct, and I
Compared
think
to
that's
other
one
games.
point I just gave. No, because Magic has this huge information network that actually like informs you of everything else, and there's a local judges that'll tell you if you're doing something wrong. And by that time, like they leverage on their internet and people checking out their games and stuff like that to sort of pass the information along. So there's a lot of correction in infrastructure that kind of prevents people from playing it wrong, so to speak. And of course now with YouTube and
But I think,
everyone else,
yeah,
it just makes it that much easier.
yeah.
Yeah, but
I
when,
think core to that is Magic
yep,
very defined in the keywords and what the keywords do and how to things.
yep,
And I think
yep.
every time you play a game or introduce a game to people, you have to template those keywords. So you could have used look, right? But then within the context of your game, your look doesn't also say reveal.
Correct,
Reveal is a two-player interaction.
correct,
a
exactly.
one-player
And
interaction.
yeah, and correct. And the thing is that you can't expect. I mean, it's really bad for any game to say that, oh, I'm trying to target Magic the Gathering players. Like, come on, let's be frank here. Like, really, are you really trying to steal people away from Magic? Do you think you have the cojones to do it? I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying, like, hey, really? That's a really interesting like bet you're trying to gamble there. So yeah, so I tried to do that.
Well,
I think I gave up on the approach in the end.
right. As in, I think for me, it's also about the flavor of the word that they use, scry, and how scry in other games are not called scry, but they're often used in like fortune telling or some sort of seer, right? I think that the amount of flavor, the minute you have that mechanic in your
Yeah,
game, it kind of already paints the world for me to some degree.
yeah.
So I like it in all sense, and so you said look, right? I would just explain to my friends, oh, you're just telling the future, you're controlling the future. Right? If you don't like the future, you just put it at the bottom. If you
Right,
like, or you can just rearrange it as to what order you like, right?
right.
And I think that itself is very flavorful. So
Yeah.
that's why I like the mechanic too. Yeah.
Yeah. So oh yeah, now I remember. I did not actually use the word look. So what I did was I said, draw the top card of the deck. You may choose to then you may then choose to either put it back to the top of the deck or put it at the bottom of the deck. That's it. I use draw instead of anything else. So I don't say you keep it in your hand, just very specifically that card. you put it in or you put it out. So you know that when you draw, you're supposed to keep it hidden anyway. So it was one of the like weirder journeys that I had to like try and figure out. So I think that was the. It's been so long.
Actually, now we're on that topic, right?
Yeah.
You just reminded me of a very short story where I think it was a game design class, and one participant actually asked me, what is a hand?
Well, it's a
What's
hand,
a
right?
Yeah, what is a hand? And I realized it was that I will never forget that moment
You're
because
right.
it made me realize, how even something as simple as the word hand
Right.
could be
Exactly.
understood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
I had I still have people who are not very well versed in Magic or card games in general, and some who are, and they just do it ironically, who very jokingly go, they think they're being funny, by the way, jokingly go, show me your hand.
I thought hand was a bit more. I think I always thought hand was a bit more common to anyone who played card games because hand is also
Yeah.
a term that's used in poker, and
Yeah,
you
it
don't
is.
expect there's a very there's some overlap of people who play poker and people who play Magic, but it's the same thing.
Yeah,
But
it
it's the
is.
same is the one term that always catches I think a lot of people who don't actually play Magic, but it's so often used by people who do have played Magic is tutor.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Like
Yeah, Jedi was
we
using
say
it
that,
earlier.
but that was using it earlier, right? But if you don't play Magic, you have no idea what tutor means.
Yeah,
Scry,
exactly.
you could almost imagine what it means.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Scry is like because scry word means to look at
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
right? To see to the future. But what does tutor mean? Like
yeah.
but
Like,
in Magic, tutor means to fetch a card, to search for a specific card and fetch it.
right.
Right. But many other cards don't actually say that. Many other cards actually have to specify, say, search for this. But even Magic
Correct.
doesn't say tutor as a keyword. Tutor is just a reference to the first card that ever did it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Actually, tutor sounds like it could be like mentor.
Yeah,
The
exactly,
mentor mechanic.
exactly.
Exactly, but because it's Magic is was so key to a lot of people's like growing up and a lot of people's
Yeah.
history or growing up with card game, tutor becomes such a term, but you can't then use the same tutor word in any other card game you're designing.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
doesn't really make sense.
Correct. So you definitely can't use you definitely can't use those shorthands. Even Magic doesn't shorthand say tutor for what. They don't do it even after all this time. Everyone uses it. Everyone who plays Magic after a while uses it, but even Magic doesn't do it, and so you're not gonna get away with it. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sure.
But Scry is a really interesting choice. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Equis, how about you?
I was going through the list. I could pick two, I guess. I'll pick one, just be nice. But the one card game mechanic that I really like, and again, I think it is sort of relevant to the way we think about it, and since our definition. But the card game mechanic I really like is action economics. You're given a set amount of actions within within a turn, and you play against that. So Netrunner is 3 clicks, 4 clicks. Slay the Spire is 3 actions, 4 actions. Most other games, actions are fairly open comparative to the resources you have to play. So you can play as many cards as you have resources for.
Yeah.
Each of them is an action. But
Yeah.
there are a few games that just control the number of action. And as much as I say that, I think it only works in certain types of games. If there's any other type of card, like if you told me the action mechanic in your game, then I would look at your game and see whether I want to play it. But now that I'm talking and sort of rambling and tangentially going, if you told me your card game had a drafting mechanic, I'm very likely to play that.
By the way, my card game actually has a drafting mechanic.
Yeah, in which case that's the bit where I think so. Maybe I'll just revamp my answer. My favorite mechanic in card games are if I get to draft during play.
So it was
against my favorite card game, but now I'm rambling in my head. But yeah, one of my favorite mechanics is drafting. Yeah.
it is kind of funny because I have a weird question then. Have you played Epic?
Epic? No, I don't think I did.
Oh, okay. Epic has a very interesting thing. What they did was that Epic is the so how Epic works is that you have unlimited actions, but you have, technically speaking, 1 mana per turn. Like literally just 1 coin. Yeah, and I can't remember whether you can roll it forward or not. I actually really cannot remember. It's been so long. But when you're playing with it, what happens is that most cards are free, so you pay with some other things. But there was like some cards which make a difference, and it's like one. It just cost one, and it's always just one. You know, so in some crazy way, like that's a form of action. Action limitation. I don't know. Action economy. I guess. Like if you don't call it a gold coin, you just call it something else. Is that still an action economy?
Certain. Depending again on the type, the way the cards are played. But
I suppose.
yeah. I'm going
That's
to change
fine.
my answer to drafting and then talk about drafting instead. But action economies, I think, only work in specific cases because, to be honest, not a lot of card games use it, and I think not a lot of card games
Yeah, yeah.
benefit from it.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of
No,
card
I
games
think
are really strict about it either. I like how I like how Keyforge technically did something like that. I feel they did something like that. It's one way of describing it. I'm not 100% certain whether you would describe it the same way, because the way Keyforge did it.
they did.
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry, you did. I vaguely remember it, but
Yeah. To be fair, look, I've not touched Keyforge. I just watched videos of it because I have friends who are like, "Hey, Jared, you like Magic, right? You're into card games, right? Richard Garfield came out with a new card game after so many years. And they're like, do you want to go and check it out?" And I was like, Okay, like yeah, I'll go check videos of it and let's see how it is because some of my friends call me Richard Garfield. Have you?
I've seen it. I have not actually tried it. No.
Okay, cool.
I know how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, so basically they have a system that says every action in one form or another sort of gives your opponent certain resources that allows them to like do more stuff the next turn as well. So you sort of have to be very careful with the sort of the size of your actions, that kind of thing, which is interesting in its own way. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like it didn't really hit big, or as big as I thought. I think some people expected it to be, but hey, I guess a lot of people just sort of.
Well, it's a long time and
the name.
That's a lot of guys. I did play Keyforge, and I will tell you why it didn't hit big.
Yeah. Look, I
move on.
very different discussion. Yeah. But yeah, it's interesting because yeah. Oh, so I shared mine on the Discord channel also a while back, which was sorry, not a while back. It was just a couple of days back. And mine was I think he was going to pick one. I surprisingly would pick varying resources. It's one of the few things I think gives a lot of flexibility to card games and a lot of tactical and sort of variation to the experience. Especially if it's designed well, it leads to a really interesting gameplay. Like there are games that have literally tried not to do that, and every one that tried not to do that ends up getting themselves stuck somewhere. Like really, they'll just find themselves stuck somewhere. Yu-Gi-Oh! Try not to do it, and then they found themselves stuck somewhere. I'm not saying it's bad, by the way. They're just stuck somewhere.
Yeah.
Shit, I'm suddenly drawing blanks. I need my list. But yeah, there are a lot of games that try to do it and just get stuck. Even Pokemon has it. Even every working like every major working card game that you know that you're still fond of and you still play right now has some sort of variable resource to some degree. Yeah, and I think the variable resource is part of that success.
I think I just want to point out that it's quite interesting that both of you brought up these two mechanics because I was going to say that for action economy, from what I observe, I think it's generally more acceptable or easier to understand with newcomers, right? It's like, oh, you have you only need to do 3 things per turn, okay?
Yeah.
Just 3 things, right? Or 1 thing, right? And then they just like based on that they can follow, and there's a flow to it as well. It moves on naturally. Varying resources, it's like, oh my god, because there's so many factors. If you're a newcomer, you're just overwhelmed. And I think that's the part where we love because we've been playing card games for a long time. So I just thought it was interesting how these two are like on both ends of the spectrum and help us think like, oh, would this game be better for a newcomer, for example, if you want to introduce them a card game?
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. So here's the funny thing that I just want to leverage on that one, is that that the idea of choice, never mind the fact that your choices are still limited by your hand size and whatever else you can do and all that kind of stuff, right? Just the idea of choice and information, right, can overwhelm some people, right, so much that they won't even attempt to play the game. It's always been a massive fascination for me, and that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people I know, aside obviously for the financial reasons, do not want to touch Magic. Like there's so much to learn. It's so deep a well. Like I just can't take it, that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's
Confession.
interesting.
Oh, sorry. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, you
Then
want to go do a confession first?
Yeah, do
You
a
said
confession first.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, confession.
That's such a beat,
Story
man.
time. So I mean, I actually started out as a Hearthstone player because I thought that Magic the Gathering was, well, not only was it expensive, but it was just, a little bit too much that I saw so much text and I was like, oh my god, I can't handle.
Yeah,
The
man.
irony is I actually started out in Yu-Gi-Oh! So I don't know how I saw that as too much when Yu-Gi-Oh! Is basically like, the epitome of like too many words in a text box. But I think even fundamentally, I felt that Magic was, in terms of its complexity of the system and the varying resources, that itself was already something. And the phases, right? Like
Yeah.
that was a lot. And I think that's why Hearthstone was my first love, because of how it was kind of streamlined but captured that experience, without all that information. And then eventually I grew out of Hearthstone because it was a bit too simple, and I moved on to Magic the Gathering. So that's my contribution. Yeah.
Jedi, it's fine. Jared and I have shit on Hearthstone so often in the past. I played lots of it.
Look,
Uh,
I'll be like, I think so for me, I am very much a person that respects products as a product of their time. I hope you understand what I mean by that. Like
Yeah.
Hearthstone, however you want to pronounce it, came out at a time when digital trading card games weren't a big thing, and there wasn't a solid model to say, okay, hey, this is how we can make it work. Magic the Gathering tried to do it, and they tried to do it twice before, like the current Magic the Gathering arena, and they f balls up in the air. Sorry, by the way, I've been waiting for that burp for the longest amount of time. Every time you see me on camera doing this, it's because I'm actually holding back a burp. Anyway, buying Coke before a podcast or a video cast is a bad idea. I have to learn this the hard way. I usually have coffee and I usually have tea on the side.
Juice.
Yeah, I mean, to each their own, man. I usually have coffee. I usually have tea on the side. It's just that today I was rushing back from a hot pot party with a couple of friends, and I was like, you know what? I need to get a drink. I'm just gonna grab a Coke anyway. Sorry, but yeah, Hearthstone is really much a product of its time. No one could really figure out how to properly monetize digital card games. At any time, even Magic the Gathering tried it out like so many times, it just failed and flopped. And Blizzard, for all their flaws, managed to figure it out. So they managed to make it work. And it's not to say, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
no, sorry, you were going to say something.
Oh yeah. So I was gonna say, like, this is not to say that Blizzard's like makes gold out of everything they touch. God knows, Heroes of Storm have some issues. But yeah, but and Hearthstone is definitely like sort of faltered over over the years. But it is the one that I can properly credit to say, hey, you started the digital card game, the normalization of digital card games into mobile, that kind of thing. So yeah, so I'll definitely give them that star. I'll definitely give them that star.
But rewinding back to the start of the tangent, one of the things I was going to talk about was the complexity of decision making or analysis paralysis.
Oh yeah, got that.
That often happens in early stages or over design games, like very design games, right? And it is a big thing. Like I have seen it so often in my career where in the first pace of the thing, the presentation of the game is like, it makes sense to me. Well, yeah, because I designed it. But the UI sucks, or the decision making isn't clear, or the pacing isn't clear, or the structure of information gathering isn't clear, right? And therefore people get lost, and they get lost. And you know, and I remember this because when I was prototyping a card game, and my card game is actually really, really simple. It's not, I think it has like 2 resources and like minimal bookkeeping. And I'm like, this is easy to play, but I was testing it against other game designers. And
Yeah,
other
yeah.
game designers who've never played card games before, who don't like inherently know how to manage a hand or inherently know what a card combination is or
Yeah.
what a deck management is, like
Yeah.
found it really stressful.
Yeah.
And it's the same case where like you take someone who's only ever played FPS, right? And then you ask him to play, hey, do a city sim build management game,
Right.
and trust him into something like say Total War or anything that Paradox puts out, and your brain goes like, yep, I'm not doing that. No.
Well, so yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going to play Team Fortress 2 and I'll never touch Crusader Kings. And
exactly.
Like, that's probably
Yeah. So just to make it like the reason why I reacted the way I did to Jedi's point about like what is a hand thing is because I actually had people ask me very, very similar questions before. Like even the idea of which was it? I can't remember which one. Very simple. It was a very simple concept that ended up that I was playing with a bunch of people who actually don't touch card games, at all. And I was playing my game. It was a really, really simple concept, and they were asking me about it, and it completely blindsided me because I never thought it was a thing. It was never an issue. I literally have like went out to events and have never been asked the question before, like for years.
say that, you know. Again, I was working in the industry. I work as a designer, right? And I work with other designers. And I remember doing a prototype of a game, and we play Magic. And we used to play Magic, like guys like us, we play Magic, right? And you know, before the advent of like the phones, like smartphones, we think about like how do we used to count our health? We either had like pieces of paper or we had a bunch of dice that we rolled around on the board, right? That's what we used to do. That's how we did it, you know. Most of the time it was like a piece of paper and a pen, and like I'm just gonna scratch my life out. That's bookkeeping. I'm gonna do that. So I'm prototyping games in the studio with a bunch of people who are game designers, but who mostly play digital games. And I asked them to do that, and they're like, "This is really tedious. I hate doing this. This is unfun." And I'm like, oh, "Jesus Christ."
Yeah, like oh god, yeah, and let's not go there, man. Like that's actually a pain point for me. I have I constantly hear about designers who do analog games and like they just do it because it's part of their coursework. They have no respect for analog games and like have no interest in trying to learn design theory from analog games. It is such a pain. Like I get there's so much depression in me just because of that one point.
Different topic, not it.
Yeah, different topic.
Okay, wait. I have a random question for the both of you.
All right, sure.
So I think I remember writing this on like my year 1 game design paper. I think we were analyzing game mechanics, and I don't know the answer to this day. I think I didn't have time to address it, and I didn't look back. But one thing that my prof initially disagreed with me, but somehow I was able to convince him that I might be right, was if metagaming itself, right? Like if is deck building a mechanic, and I'm not referring to like Ascension or like, you know, I'm not talking about those games. Right? I'm talking about literally constructing your deck according to the metagame.
Yes.
Is that itself a mechanic?
Let me ask you a question then. How do you split the hairs between a mechanic and a feature?
Digipen people know this. I actually gave a talk about this 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
But this is really pure design talk.
Yep.
A feature is meant to evoke an aesthetic. A feature is meant to evoke an aesthetic and a behavior.
Okay.
Not behavior, sorry. It's meant to evoke an aesthetic. It's meant to design a particular emotional or intellectual or technical evocation.
Okay.
So a feature, like, pick a game. I'm just gonna. I want to say.
I mean, we're talking about card games today, so let's talk about card games.
Let's talk about. Well, card games are a bit more difficult.
Let's use Hearthstone for example. Do you think we can use Hearthstone for example?
We can use Hearthstone because the feature I would classify as features would be then like say casting creatures.
Right.
I cannot remember what Hearthstone called, but it's casting a creature.
Right.
The mechanic is sometimes the cast of it, right? I want to use Runeterra because I play more Runeterra.
Okay, fine. Let's use Runeterra then.
But I can't remember whether Hearthstone does the same thing, but I think there's a distinction there. So there is a feature which is basically summon a creature.
Right.
But there are 2 mechanics to summoning a creature. There are actually 3 mechanics to summon. creature.
Right.
Play, summon,
Right.
and like revive from exile.
Yeah.
Which is the shadow version, right? But they're both, all of them basically say summon. But
Right.
then the mechanic then becomes summon a creature. So when you see summon a creature, it means when this creature gets summoned.
Hmm.
But play involves summoning. But play is a mechanic that also involves playing it from hand. When you play a creature, it gets summoned. But when you revive a creature from the exile, it also gets summoned. So now you have two cards. Now you have a creature that says, I have an ability that triggers when summoned, but I also have another creature that only has an ability when triggers from play. So if that creature was summoned, like it was cast or it was somehow like magically appear on screen, it wouldn't then have to play effect.
Correct.
Right? So that's the difference, right? The feature is still the creature appears on the board, but the mechanic is specifically how it does so.
Okay, so
Right?
basically,
That,
so what you're saying is the mechanic is a microcosm of a feature, potentially
yeah,
speaking.
but mechanics make up a feature.
Right,
Like,
right. Okay.
the way
So it's like
mechanics
DNA
interact with each
to a
other,
living being.
yeah, it's like that. Well, I'm not the one in charge of the channel, but maybe I should give you the image because I have the image in one of my things.
I'm so sorry.
Mechanics make up feature.
Right.
Feature is meant to evoke a particular
Okay.
design decision or design wish.
All right.
But that's how I define.
So sorry. So Jedi, coming back to your question earlier, right? How did you define deck building again? You said it was a mechanic, or was it a?
Well, I think we were talking about mechanics. So yeah, I was kind of like asking myself, I can understand why if it's not a mechanic within the game,
Right.
but if we're talking about the meta game of it,
Right.
right? When we are, it's about knowing the trends,
Yeah.
knowing the relative strengths of the cards, right? And all of that. I was wondering, is that a mechanic in a meta game sense?
Not even true. Like it is a mechanic in terms of deck building. Like you don't build a magic deck full of red mana and then throw black creatures.
Well,
Right.
so Jedi, can I ask this really dumb question? Did you write that paper before or after Hearthstone? Like,
It actually goes to me, like, and I have zero qualms of questioning the knowledge and experience of the professor because I don't know who he is.
Yeah.
You know my feelings about Japan anyway. But it's a deck building mechanic. Deck buildings have rules. You build decks based according to rules. You can't just put a bunch of cards together and call that a game. Like deck building has a rule, and the rules are mechanics.
But his argument is that because it happens prior to the actual gameplay,
right.
Therefore, it's not a mechanic.
Right. So
that's nonsense. That's regardless of what, that is an utter nonsense way of thinking about it.
I suppose, but also
I know this bothers me so much because he's a professor. He's teaching people. But no, like I define like damage numbers. I define progression numbers, experience numbers before you play the game. Those are mechanics. They happen before you play the game, but they are freaking mechanics.
I'm just gonna go ahead and say that I freaking love having the two of you guys together. Like, this is just fantastic. I actually freaking love this. I don't like it when it's like super flat discussions. So no offense to Equis and every segment that we've done before this, but like, this is nice. For what it's worth, this is nice.
Well, it's not, to be fair, it's not like Jedi and I disagreeing. I'm just reacting to this.
I know, which is fine.
Which is great, right? Because I'm not disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
I don't know how I would have done
right.
Because when I was in Digipen, I've argued to Claude before, and I'm like, I don't think that was a wise idea. But
okay, so let me try to give my answer to that. Like, if I was to sit in that same space, and keep in mind, obviously, I do not approach this question with the mindset of a fresh grad or of a person who's writing that paper at a time. This is with the benefit of like years past Hearthstone and all this history of gaming, between now and when you first wrote the paper. The reason why I ask this is because it's very simple. If you say that deck building is not a mechanic, then my question to you is, if I remove deck building from Hearthstone because you say that it's not a mechanic, are you still playing Hearthstone?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, I can give you a deck.
That's the same argument I gave him.
So that's exactly it.
Yep. Did Hearthstone give you starter decks?
Yeah, they do. Starter decks, they do. But the point is that it's a mechanic because of two factors. One of them is that it's what I mean. This is how I usually try to test theories out. It's basically if I remove it from this equation, what happens from there? You know, that's one way of looking at it. And then the other way of looking at it is that the other way I choose to look at it is if which is related to why I started this segment with you guys about defining what a card game is, right? Which is what's a mechanic supposed to do? A mechanic, at least to me, it's supposed to get players to do something. And it's supposed to ideally get them to engage with the game in one way, form, or another, in some shape or form or another. Variable powers or variable decks and everything else, variable powers, right, as a mechanic, isn't something you consciously choose to do at the start of at any time, especially if I randomize the powers, right? But let's use Dota for example, right? You choose your hero, but the choice of the hero isn't a part of the actual gameplay itself. But the way you choose your heroes matter. And yet it's listed as a mechanic. Variable powers is listed as a mechanic. Right? Everyone acknowledges that the choice of heroes, the ability to select variable heroes, is a mechanic. No one questions this part. So if the choice of how you choose your hero is outside the gameplay, and you can accept that as a mechanic, then why isn't deck building in trading card games a mechanic? Because that's outside the game as well. Right? So,
I'm really trying to find it. Maybe I'll send it to.
Yeah. Anyway, so one of two. So basically, how I usually define these kind of things is usually I do two things. One of them is take it out of the equation. Does it still work? The other one is look for parallels.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. And
Right.
the fact is, the parallel in both cases, I can answer in this way. Some people argue that I'm splitting hairs because even if you're in playing Dota, you do have different hero powers and everything else, which leads, like, that's why you have variable heroes and variable powers by definition, because it's inside the play. But then when you're playing like Magic or any other trading card game or card games in general, you do have varying powers as well, because your decks are meta decking aside, are generally different. You know, that kind of
Right,
thing.
exactly. Yep.
So yeah.
Oh, thank you. I feel very validated, and also I really like the way that you have explained it. I think I would have totally gotten that A if it weren't for no, just kidding. I did write a relatively good paper. It was just that one thing that we hotly debated about, and he did give it to me in the end. So he's not that bad a professor. Hi, Michael.
Oops. Now we have a name.
Yeah, well, yeah. I don't know if I posted in the right thing. I'm just gonna send it to Jared. It's basically just putting out a bit of a slide that I was.
Yeah, but I have to. I think I mentioned this before. I can't see anything because it's streaming directly off Discord. I can't check it out right now. Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
The camera to show it, but that's a really janky way to do it. I'm not gonna do that. Sorry, I'm not.
All right.
I agree with Jared. As in, my simple definition is because the player interact with it. Yes, it's a mechanic.
Yeah, but to be fair to your professor, it is a fairly unorthodox way of looking at it. I want to be like, yeah, but to say, the thing is that it is one of those kind of things where, to say that it's not is very weird. To say that it is just unusual. So
again, I don't think it is.
Well, so the thing is that weird is an emotional response. Unusual is a chronological response, like as in, like, you know, your cognitive chronological response, like your history of understandings and stuff like that. We as a race have often found that those that are weird are not necessarily meaningful, like as in it's a very poor definition for stuff, especially when we're trying to think things logically, or we're supposed to be defining things logically. And historically unusual is worthless in the context of study, like as in you are supposed to study and you're supposed to learn new things. So being open to new ideas and challenging established truths should not be too out of that picture for you. Personally, for me, it's like if a student does give me that question, I will have that talk with you. I personally would still have that talk with you, but I'll probably give you the score like extra. I would give you that score as a positive, simply because it is a weird as perspective to look at it, and I don't see that as necessarily a bad thing. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
if you put in the work to define what it is, because first of all, I don't think it is a weird distinction. I think it's or not even an unusual one. I think it's one the reaction that came from saying deck building is not a mechanic feels more born from an unfamiliarity of how deck building or card games work as a whole. Because there are a couple like one of my favorite deck building mechanics ever, which is again very rarely used, but Star Wars did it and Card Hunter use it, which is you don't build decks individually, you don't build cards individually, you build cards by sets.
Mm-mm.
Right? And a few card games do this, right? Like which Singapore did a roguelike deck builder recently. I didn't play it, but I played a bit of it.
I guess Smash Up is also similar in that way,
Something like
right?
that, right? Like
Yeah.
you include a sword in your set, but the sword gives you 3 types of cards. But this really
Right,
makes
right.
interesting decisions about deck building because now you're thinking about padding. Now you're thinking about like what happens if you build a deck of cards that's just all 60 cards, really powerful silver bullets instead of worthwhile card. But it changes the way design has to work because I can make really powerful cards, but I can pad it with a sword that does 2 damage, for example.
Mm.
Right? In Hearthstone, and so much of deck building, so much of card game design is defined by how you build the decks. To be fair, like you can have 4 cards in Magic, you can have 3 cards in everything else in Runeterra. What if you could have more? What if your entire deck was just champions in Runeterra? How would that affect the balance? This is a mechanic that's designed for the interaction and
Fun-
it's part of the deck building.
Yeah, funny point there. I have a friend who made a Magic the Gathering deck where the entire premise of his deck is to beat you to shits with planeswalkers. He
mean,
barely has anything else.
yeah.
He's just a bunch of control and planeswalkers.
Magic had a lot of. Like, I remember one of my friends' deck was basically just 4 Leviathans. That's it. That's the entire deck. It's 4 Leviathans, and every other card is basically get the Leviathan onto the table as quickly as possible. Screw you over, right? That's the deck. It's fun to play. It's not the most reliable one. But it's fun to play.
Love it. The jank is real. Love it.
Yeah, man,
Yeah,
the jank is
people do
real.
that. People like Magic often talks about those the Timmies and the spikes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the spikes and the jollies.
I'm one of those. I'm the TV. I'm like, I want to see how jank I can get. Can I beat you with a jank? Can I make you scream? And I'm like, yeah, 30% win rate. I'm not taking this competition.
I'm a Johnny Timmy split.
Yeah.
So I'm a Johnny Timmy
Same.
split.
I'm a joint.
Yeah. So for me, the way it works is, I want to win with weird ways, but it needs to be splashy as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So if it's like, I've seen some decks where like all they do is like roll off some 45-step combo where they split hairs between rules and like squeeze out every last drop of mana they could and just kill you with something. Yeah, that's not my style. My style
Yeah.
is sorry.
Most designers end up being Johnny Timmy splits. No,
I think most designers are
if you are
Johnnies
Spike,
actually.
you're probably an combination, right? If you're Spike, you're probably an esports person right now.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. But anyway, so yeah, so in my case, I mean, my pride and joy for Magic, my pride and joy for Magic was this one deck I was playing. It's a Type 2 deck, which is purely standard legal at one point, where I could make an infinite creature and just smack you to death with it, and it would have trample and regeneration and anything else I could think of.
Start wondering whether you are one of those reasons I think I quit Magic. But
No. I'm very civil about it. It had a 30% win rate. It only has a 30% win rate. I lost 2/3 of my games with it, but I was like, you know what? For that 1/3, I am happy. I made a guy quit the game. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say this is really fun.
No, I was gonna. Oh, okay.
My heart
All
stopped.
right.
It's about 5 minutes ago. But this has been really fun. I do think if the two of you continue the conversation, maybe I'm gonna come back and just listen to the rest of it. But there's always other times to catch up. I almost started
Oh,
a bit late. Sorry.
oh, I'm so sorry, man. All right. So, Equis, I guess we will continue a little bit more, I suppose, for now. If Jedi is
Yeah, don't
okay.
let me tell you guys. Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
I'm good.
But you will be missed,
Yeah,
and if you can come back, let us know. We'll be happy to continue with you back
see
in.
how long my errands take, but I have to run. So sorry, guys.
Yeah.
You're around.
Do rush if you can. Oh man.
No, I was gonna ask, like, what do you mean you were civil? Like, did you go, oh, and here, sir, I shall have
Oh,
an infinite
no, no,
and
no, no,
attack
no.
you polite?
So the way I do it is that I will read my opponent. That means I'm not. I will go like, look, you look like you might need a little help along the way, so I will declare everything slowly to you, you know? So this is what I'm gonna do.
Mm.
Are you okay with this? Do you have anything to play? And like I don't rub it in. And I'm going like, okay, all right, cool. All right, guys, I'm set up. Do you have anything to play? Because if you don't beat me now, I'm gonna win next turn. And I don't think you have anything to beat me with. And then they'll go like, are you sure? I said, yes, I am. So I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna do, all right? So it's my turn, blah blah blah, and I'll just do really slowly. And it was just this calm and slow voice where like I'm not trying to rub it in or anything else. Yeah.
I'll be like, just kill me now, like, just kill me now. Don't even show me. Just.
Yeah. But no. But like, if they want to see, if they don't want to see, it's fine. You know, that kind of thing. I like, you know. But I have to show it to them. I had one time when I was setting it up. Because it, so the card in question I was very proud of playing was it's called Necrotic Ooze. To this day, is still my favorite card. Have you heard of it?
Yes.
Yes, it is still my favorite card.
I'm
So
studying old magic. Yes.
yes, to you it's old. To me, it's like it felt like yesterday. I feel freaking old. Anyway, so yeah, so how it worked was that basically, like, I played this combo where, sorry, for those who don't know, Necrotic Ooze basically says, while in play, it has the activated ability of all creatures in all graveyards, including your opponents. So there was this one time, basically my deck, right, was concentrated to just dropping creatures into the graveyard and then bringing out Necrotic Ooze. And basically there was this there were two creatures at the time that was running around. One of them was Grim Grin, legendary creature. Everything else is secondary. What it did have is that it has an active ability. It says, sacrifice a creature, untap Grim Grin, put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then at the same time, there was this other creature which is called Blood Lineage, if I'm not mistaken. It had tap, create a 2/2 bat token with flying. So what you could do is with a Necrotic Ooze on play, you can just tap, create a bat token, sacrifice it for Grim Grin, and then untap, then you get +1/+1 token. And basically, if your hand moves fast enough, you just do that a million times in front of your opponent's face, and then like, yeah, just like, hey, here it is. Then you have a million creature, and everyone's going like, okay, but you can just block it with 1/1 and I'm done. In cycle at the same time was another card called Skin Shifter, which is a 2-drop 0/1. It had an ability called it had an activated ability says I think it's P1 green or P1, I can't remember anymore. Until the end of turn, Skin Shifter is either a 2/2 flyer, a 4/4 creature with trample, or a 0/8 wall. And obviously, you're going to just turn it into a 4/4 trampler, and then all the tokens take place, and then you have an infinite trampler. Yeah, then everyone goes like, oh, but it dies to Doomblade. And then you show them the Masticore that you've dropped into the grave, which gives it regeneration. And
Nice.
Yeah, and then they tell you that, oh, but yeah, then I can fog my way through. And then you show them, which is also in play at the time, the Spike Shot Elder that can turn your Infinite Ooze into an Infinite Ping. Because Spike Shot Elder says it's a 1 red, deal damage equal to its power, to Spike Shot Elder's power, to target player or creature. So yeah, so you have all that in the grave, and you just go like, what you gonna do about it? But yeah, but it only had a 30% win rate.
Was that available in standard at the time?
Yes,
or
yeah.
Was it in historic?
No, it was completely available across 6 expansions. That's why I kept saying it was Necrotic Ooze was within Meridian Besieged, and most of the creatures that I was talking about was within split between the core set at the time. If not, it was during the Oh god, it's Innistrad. It's the Innistrad cycle, the first Innistrad cycle. So it was purely within those two expansions. It was like super fun, and it
I
yeah.
feel. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
I was gonna say I feel like I missed that part of Magic where you could do a lot of degenerate stuff like that in standard. Like they have really learned how to at least power down everything in general.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So
I think it got really degenerate around. I didn't know at the time because I first started playing Magic around Uza's Legacy. It was really, really, really bad around that era. I didn't realize how bad it was until during that time. Yeah, it was really, really bad. I was playing with like Tempest cards. I was playing with Legacy cards, and I didn't realize how powerful they were. And then like nowadays, when I look back at it, and I was like, and I play cards like that, I was like, holy crap, that era, like those cards from that era is just ridiculously expensive. Like Gia's Cradles are like super expensive now. Yeah, I had four.
exactly.
I had four. I had four.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
are you lagging? Let
Yeah,
me
my
see.
screen, my screen's completely frozen. By the way, I noticed that even my video is completely frozen. I don't know what's going on.
Oh no, are you running out of memory?
I think it's the app that I'm using to do my video. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shift back to my other video. Just give me. Oh god, this is really bad because people are actually gonna see this for a short while. But I'm just gonna just quickly change my my camera source and
Okay.
does that help? Oh no, no.
Yeah, you're moving. Yes, I saw someone. Oh wait, now it's off. Now
Yep.
it's off.
Yep, this should be it. Yeah.
You did something earlier that was.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah.
Because no. So what happened is that I have this app that links my phone directly to my laptop that uses it as a camera. I have a spare phone, by the way. So it has a much better picture quality. Like this is grainy and stuff, and I don't like it. But yeah, you know, it's
I would say it's a lot clearer and smoother compared to the previous camera.
Oh really? Oh dang.
Yeah.
That's no good. Anyways, but yes, yeah. So, but I think I think they've become more creature focused nowadays, and the balancing's gotten a lot better, which is good for them. But I guess that some people are like looking back in the old days and go like, oh, how did they ever get away with this?
Right.
Yeah.
I think I want to maybe for the purposes of this session, I kind of want to bring up unstable unicorns.
I've never played it, by the way.
I'm not sure if you have.
No, I've not played it.
So I play unstable unicorns, and it's quite cute. The aim of the game is you're supposed to raise and reach a certain number of unicorns. And there are a few card types. One is of course a unicorn, which there are basic unicorns which have no effects, and then there are like magical unicorns that have effects, right? That could be powerful. And then you of course have your regular like spells that you can use to maybe summon more unicorns, draw more cards, etc. And it's quite simple. You can play up to 2 cards per turn, so you can play any combination of unicorns or spells. And what I liked about it is how I talked about how earlier when Leonard mentioned the action economy, right? I mean, so the game itself already uses action economy by limiting your number of cards to 2. But if you were to look at the effects itself, you can tell that the people that made it obviously played card games their whole life, because they use mechanics from every single card game you can think of that's complicated, like Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic. It's all there. But when I was playing it with my friends who don't play card games, they were somehow able to get it. And for some reason, because of the card balance, even though I still won in the end always, but I really felt like I had a hard time winning. There was something about it that I think they balanced it out. It seems to have a way to make card games like this very approachable. And I talk a lot about like how certain mechanics being easy to understand or the game being approachable, accessible is important, because I've always felt like, oh my god, I want more friends to play the card games. Otherwise, it's just the same people, and to me, in the earlier days, that has always been an issue. Like people think that card games have this like very complicated like mask to them. And so I appreciate it when a game like Unstable Unicorns, kind of tears that apart. And even it's in the name itself, right? Like Unstable Unicorns, and you already think of, oh, this is cute and fun and approachable. So I quite like it. Yeah.
It's funny actually. So to be honest with you, like for me, I think so. Unlike a lot of people, my first exposure to trading card games was through a friend of mine, which I don't call often enough these days. But like he introduced me to BattleTech.
BattleTech. Let me
yes,
Google that.
Yes, it is a defunct card game that's based off the MechWarrior series. If you're familiar with MechWarrior at all.
I have seen this before. Yeah.
It's really old. It is rules-wise more complicated than Magic in some ways, because, or rather, it's tactically more significant than Magic. Is the word I'm going to use. It's a very weird line to draw, but basically how it works is that when you play BattleTech, one mechanic that like that BattleTech had going for it, which was a bit interesting, which was it had varying zones. So like if you play Magic, if you know Magic, all your creatures are in one zone, and that's it. It's just open fields, you attack, and if no creature blocks, you hit the player, right? That's how Magic works. For BattleTech, everything that you play on the board has its own zone. There is a construction zone where your mechs are being built. There's your supply zone. I can't remember the proper names for this, by the way. Where your resources are, your resource card, your lands, so to speak. Your resource cards are. And then there's your deck. And then there is this card pile. For some reason, it's actually a zone on its own. So then what happens is that so they've zoned it out real nice, and then what happens? And then there's the free zone that's directly in front of you. So how it works is that you build stuff inside the construction zone, and then what you can do from there is that you once things are constructed, you can it goes into the free zone. And then from the free zone, you can then assign them to individual zones. And why this matters is that if your mechs are all in the free zone, mechs in the game had speeds. They were like slow, medium, and fast speeds mechs. If you wanted to block an attack from the free zone, you have to be faster than the attacking mech. So if I attack you with fast mechs, you can't block unless you had mechs on that specific zone. So let's say so if you want to block a mech in, say, if I was to attacking your deck, what happens is that you would need to with a fast mech, you would need to have a fast mech in your assigned to your deck, your deck or your deck zone. If not, you can't block me. That's how it works. So the crazy part about that was that I when I was playing back then, I just found it really frustrating. I didn't think about it too much, and it was only many years later that I started exploring more card games and getting more into it that I suddenly realized the nuance involved in this decision, which made it really interesting. Because when you assign something to a zone, it's stuck to that zone. It can only block within that zone. So it's saying that, hey, you can commit resources here to make sure it is stable, but you open yourself up to everything else. The resources in BattleTech are attackable. You can attack lands in BattleTech, so nothing is free from from being attacked. You can construct stuff, and people can still attack your construction zone too, and your construction stuff right can just get blown up before they're ready. So you can be very vulnerable in the end. So yeah,
I feel like that's a game that I would actually enjoy. Yeah. I don't know. Would you think that it would hold up in the present day?
Yeah, I think it would. I think it. I think it definitely would in many ways. I think there's still the only problem is the sad truth is that the MechWarrior franchise hasn't exactly had the best history right now. Like if you looked around, you realize that every major game that slapped on a MechWarrior name hasn't exactly been hotcakes for everybody involved. Yeah, so it's a bit of a loss, but mechanically speaking, I think there is a loss, a lot of value there, and in some ways, you can sort of see hints of it in Teppen, in a way. I say in a way, but not exactly. So Capcom had this digital card game that came out like I think about a year ago by now. Actually, no, it's slightly more than
Yeah, I
it's
heard
about a
about
year
it.
ago. Yeah, so
Yep, yep.
it's the way it works is like, oh, you're two characters, you're supposed to be fighting. You have like I think five lanes? I can't remember, but basically a bunch of lanes, and then you can put cards, and you can just like there's lanes involved, and in that respect, I suppose there's some form of zones. And then they have a flying mechanic as well, so yeah, there's a bit of things going on there. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
But it sounds cool.
The soundtrack.
It kind of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you said the soundtrack?
Oh no! I said the sad thing about Teppen was that it felt a bit stale for me after a while. It was fun for a while. I was pretty into it for about I think a month or two. But the problem was that some of the decks, and even the decks that were coming out after that, like the first installments and stuff, felt like somehow felt a bit stale for me. Yeah, I don't think I don't think it wasn't fun. I think it was still fun. It would be fun for a lot of people. I just felt like it wasn't quite a game that I would continue investing time in. That's all.
So on that note, right? I realize I've never really got a chance to talk about this before, so it's gonna be fun. What do you think are the characteristics that would make up a good card player? And I guess we're talking about more again to the Venn diagram that we've talked about, right? What are some of the traits of a good card player?
For me, it always has been about your ability to sort of consolidate and manage information. So your definition about information as a thing there was definitely like a pretty solid point. I don't believe it was wrong. At least like from a player psychographic kind of thing, But strictly speaking, like yeah, if I think good people who like card games tend to be people who like to be intellectually stimulated from many different angles is the phrasing I'm going to use. So basically saying like one straight line is not enough for me. That kind of thing. It's not strategy.
It's tactical.
Yes, I guess it's the definition some people will look at. Yeah, it's not about oh yes, I can outsmart my opponent. That by itself is not enough. It needs to be I want to outsmart my opponent in my own way. And I want to be able to have varying different challenges in that kind of thing. So I think it has a lot to do with to achieve that goal, you need to have the ability to manage a significant amount of information.
Interesting. Okay, yeah. I brought it up because I think recently I was have you heard about this thing called Pop Champs?
Yes, I've heard of it.
Yeah, so I don't know too much about it, except for this one thing that happened. But there were basically a lot of like I think Hearthstone players, streamers, right? And they were kind of invited to learn how to play chess under like a chess champion or like a chess professional. So the chess professional would tutor the Hearthstone players, and one of them, like Hafu, right? Like she became really, really good at it and picked it up really quickly. And I think that got me thinking, like, yeah, there definitely is some commonality between the skills that you use for card games versus the skills that you use for chess.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
But
although I would say that.
Oh, no. All I was want to say is like, yeah, there definitely is a lot of commonality because at the end of the day, games are still games, and like as far as playing games like chess and card games are concerned, right, a lot of it has to do with understanding board states, being able to dissect what your opponent is going to do and possibly going to do, and you yourself is going to do, and then recognize what is the higher probability, what's the lower probability, and making decisions based on that. In card games, you have a more narrower range of probability, but you have a lot more diversity in what your opponents can do. In chess, you have a larger range of stuff because the board is there free for players to make their moves, but there are only that many pieces, that kind of thing.
Yep. Yep, exactly. I think it's quite interesting that yes, everything is on the board, everything is out there, right?
Yeah.
But the lines of thinking, because of the human limitation of the brain, there is a certain amount of like fog of information at the end of the day, and so yeah, that's why like okay, if you're against a computer, obviously you lose, but against another human being, you can reliably think that hey, maybe this person doesn't know my intention or know what I'm thinking after all, right? So yeah, that to me was quite fascinating, and I was quite proud to see like a Hearthstone player, to be able to pick up chess. Yeah, that was
so actually that's actually a very interesting point, which leads to a mechanic that I leads back to the mechanic discussion we're supposed to be having here. Like I mentioned earlier that my definition of it was more like there always would be a random element as part of the core gameplay, right? Yeah, and one of the games that it's been so long since I played because I did it just out of a curiosity because my friend kept bringing it up. But there was this one card game that basically had what essentially is a perfect information card game, which is really weird. You still play with cards. It's called Prismata, by the way. If anyone wants to look it up, it's available on Steam. It's pretty cheap. But yeah, basically, when you play against an opponent, I think this is what at least my friend told me. I've only played against AIs. Is that you can see everything on the board as they have laid it out, and they are going to make decisions based on what is placed on the board. I think it's still considered a card game partially because there's still a deck involved and there's still a bit of shuffling involved. So I don't think that that's necessarily wrong, but yeah, it still falls into my parameter at least in that one, and it still falls into your parameter at least by that definition as well, because there is card management as far as that one's concerned. But it is a perfect information card game, which is just really weird, right? Because everything is available on the board, and you have to make calls based on that. So in some ways, I was telling my friend, I said, "Well, isn't that a lot more like chess?" I was like playing with it a bit, and somewhere along the lines, it felt a lot like chess. And for me, it didn't hold my interest as much, partially because I think the decision making, the ability cards itself was relatively simple. And once again, and I could be wrong. I like if anyone hears this and if you've been playing Prismata like crazy and you're super into it, and you're like, no, Jared, that's not true. There's actually a lot of depth in Prismata. Yes, you're probably right, because I probably didn't give it as much time as I maybe should have. But at least when I was playing it the first parts, right, the mechanics of the cards felt relatively simple. There wasn't much for me to really fidget and play around, so it felt like there's a lot of tactical depth, like your decisions mattered, but there wasn't that wow and like, oh, I can make this work with left, right, center or something like that, like I was actually kind of looking for, and yeah, I guess it just wasn't presented to me as an option.
Yes, so interesting. I do want to try the game now. Maybe if I were to throw another wrench in our definitions just to kind of explore it, right? Or rather, if this game actually fits the definition, One Step from Eden.
Oh no, Have you heard about it? No, I've not heard that one.
Yeah, so One Step of Eden was made by Thomas Woon Kang. I actually got an opportunity to meet him in person when I went for GDC before COVID happened. And he's a very young guy, like 22-year-old. I'm just like, oh my god, how can you make such an awesome game at that age? But anyway, it's basically based off Mega Man, the Battle Network series. If you have ever like heard about it.
Yeah, I've heard about how badly it. But anyways, we go on.
So One Step from Eden was basically taking that mechanic because the game, was never renewed. It was and it has a cult following. So he focused on just that mechanic of having, your character moving along a player arena, right? And the deck aspect came from the weapons that you slot in your deck. So at the start of each round, as you're moving around this board, you can freely activate your chips or your cards in that sense. But because you had to arrange them in a specific order, whenever you press the A key, right, you're using essentially the top card of your list.
Okay.
Yeah, and then you have to refresh your hand and you draw a new hand. So it's very deck card like, but I felt like things are moving so fast, right? Because it is at the end of the day a real time action game at the same time. The lines are really blurred in this game because of how fast moving it is. And so what do you think?
Well, so that's an interesting thing because so remember when we were talking about about how I said we need to do a certain definition so that when we're doing this, we will weed out stuff that call themselves card games but actually are RPGs. There is a game called Crusader's Quest that actually falls into that criteria really well. It's actually it's a really good game, by the way. If you ever hear it, it's on a mobile. It's a pixel art game. Recently, they started doing a lot more ads. Yeah, it's really good, by the way. It's really fun. Go give it a try if you have. It's a lot of fun. But basically, what happens is that you you get a team of characters of characters that you play at every level. And then when they go in, each character has their own set of cards. Like sort of if you've played Grand Order, Fate Grand Order, it does the same thing. You deal with a hand of cards that's based on the characters involved. Then you take actions based on those cards. So you choose which one to trigger. And in fact, actually, come to think of it, Fate Grand Order does exactly the same thing. And if you think about it that way, then strictly speaking, it doesn't fall into our parameters. Like it would be intentionally omitted based on our parameters, or rather the intentions of our parameters. Yeah.
Can you choose the chips that go into your hand? Or is it drawn?
No, like it's drawn. It's randomly chosen out of the deck of like, so you bring in 5 characters, right? Each character has their own individual cards. Like if I'm a ranger, I have AABBC, for example. So if you put me into your party, your deck has an AABBC.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Wait, but there's randomness. I mean, there is some level of randomness.
Correct.
Right. Information management.
There is
Okay.
because you're still drawing from your deck.
There is.
Yeah. So because like and the thing is that your AA, BBs, and Cs, right, are not exclusive to your only ranger. Let's say, for example, you have other rangers. Like if you have other rangers that can be triggered by AA, BBC and stuff like that, right? They would still be able to be triggered by AA, BBC. They are not limited to that. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Then I guess in that sense it might loosely fit, but it's not something that I walk away feeling good about it.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. But once again, that's why this definition was so important, because there would be gray areas. I'm very sure there was gray areas. By the way, like even now, Grand Order has a physical board game version. Do you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah. Fate Grand Order has a physical board game.
It plays out the same way?
Not quite. They had to adapt a lot of things. But they came pretty close in a sense that they still have the 3 servant system. They still have you using cards like the power, agility, and intelligence cards. I can't remember the exact words, but in a deck based off the servants. So there's a lot of that elements inside, but like the play is slightly different. It's considerably different. Yeah.
I see. Ooh, cool. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make my eye. I don't go eye roll immediately when I hear
Yeah.
it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
it gets
It,
super gray. Gets super gray.
mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Unlike say Cards Against Humanity, which is literally black. Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
one that again I roll when people say they want to play a card game. I'm like, that's not. Yeah, that's
Do you know what?
drunk.
Do you know what my friend's definition of Cards Against Humanity is?
What?
It isn't. It's not a game as much as it's a social interaction facilitator.
It is a tool, a conversational tool,
Yes, it
essentially.
is. It is
Yeah.
exactly that. So I was like,
Yep.
you know what? You're absolutely right. I was like, no, that's absolutely right. I will give you for that. I'll give you that. So yeah. So anyway,
Yeah, I saw another one. It was a cognitive behavioral therapy card game, and it's basically a tool. It's
Yeah.
same.
yeah. Once again,
Yes.
I mean, look, outside this conversation, outside studies, outside game design, feel free to call it whatever you want. You know,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
fine. That's fine. But when we're talking about like when here we are talking, we want to talk about mechanics and all that kind of stuff and all that jazz. We have to be a little bit more narrow with our definitions. So yeah. So okay,
For
cool.
sure.
Let's come back on another one. Do you have another mechanic that you want to bring up? It could be something you absolutely hate or
Ooh,
you absolutely love. Is your call.
okay. I am like running through. Okay, yes, this is where the list is very useful.
Yeah, I know, right?
Uh,
So yeah, for
yeah.
anyone who's listening, we actually had a bunch. Like I asked everyone to like, hey, let's just list out stuff, so that in my heart of hearts, the intention was so that we don't end up like talking about the same stuff, you know. But obviously,
Right.
listing them down does create like topic points, prepare us a little bit better, and if we want to, we at least have something to refer to. So yeah.
Okay, I shall then talk about Hanabi since I think I was the one that brought it up.
Yes, I
Yeah.
have no idea what you're talking
I,
about.
I yeah. Wait, you have never seen
Yes,
Hanabi
no,
or
I've
played
seen
Hanabi?
Hanabi. I've seen Hanabi. I've never played it.
Okay. Okay, do you know the rules of like how it
Run me
roughly
through it.
works?
I don't recall. Just run me
Okay.
through it.
Okay, so for Hanabi, the story is you are all attempting to light the fireworks in time for the festival, right? So
Right.
you have to set off the fireworks in ascending order from 1 to 5 in 4 different colors. However, the jig is this. Unlike other games, you can't actually see your own hand. So your
Oh,
cards are
right,
actually
right.
face
Right. Now I
outwards.
remember. Now, yeah, no, sorry. I have to correct myself that I actually have played this game. Yes, I actually have played this
Right,
game.
exactly. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the beautiful part. Yeah.
Yeah, I
The
have
amount
played
of
this game.
information.
Right.
Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Oh no. So I was going to say is the reason why I don't remember this being a card game is because my friend bought the Kickstarter version, and it was the limited Kickstarter version that had tiles instead of the cards. Yeah, so I didn't play this as a card game. I played this as a
Hanabi tiles.
tile version.
Ooh, okay. So this is the mahjong
Yeah,
versus
exactly. Exactly.
card game
Correct.
argument then.
Yes, I've never played
Yeah.
Hanabi as
Mhm.
a card game. Yeah.
I actually like the tile version because I
Yes.
see them like putting dice on top of the cards.
Yeah.
That's pretty cute. I like it. Yeah.
The
But yes, I've only played it in the card version.
yeah. The tile version is really nice. I actually really like the tile version. Because what happens, you could just put them there, and like they're facing away, right? So it's really nice. It's super easy because you don't have to hold anything. You just play there and like you're going like, I'm gonna figure out how to do this. Yeah.
Yeah, not constantly holding them outwards for everybody to see
Yeah.
is truly like a very good quality of life.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. It
yeah.
is massive. It's basically playing inverse mahjong.
Yeah. And the fact that they inversed it, right? It's like someone went, what if you cannot see the cards in your hand? Like
Yeah.
that's literally how this game came about,
Yeah.
and there it was, and it suddenly changes the whole dynamic of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite mechanic.
It is such an interesting point. I actually well, I have a very loose impression of Hanabi, but that was one of the biggest impressions I've had of it, and it was one of the craziest elements which for me at the time, it was at a time when I was sort of it was at a time when we were trying to design my card game, me and my friends. We were trying to design our card game, and what happened was that we were doing a lot of study at the time. So that means we were playing out a lot of different card games and a lot of different games in general. And I had a friend of mine who was a huge board game fan and was like, "Hey, you want to see something different?" You know, he would just constantly like give us stuff to try out. And yeah, and so Hanabi was one of them, which was like, which felt crazy when I was like playing it. It's like, holy crap, this is interesting. And it's not to say it's not fun either. It's really nice. But yeah, I can't. The thing is, I've never been able to use that information. Like, as in, I've never been able to figure out another use of the Hanabi mechanic, so to speak. That Hanabi mechanic.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's true. I can't think of any other game that uses it at all.
Oh no,
right?
I can think of another game. It's just not a card game.
Wait, there is. Tell me what I've never.
Have you played? Did you watch? What was that? What's that movie called again? It's a sorry, I can't remember. Inglorious Bastards. Do you watch Inglorious Bastards?
I'm sorry. I feel like everybody has watched it except me.
Okay.
But what about it?
So they
Yeah.
were playing this game where I'm quite sure you've played this. I just don't know what I don't know what the official title is, but the name that me and my friends call is Who Am I? Have you ever played Who Am I?
Maybe when you talk about the rules,
All
I
right.
might
So
suddenly
how it works
remember,
is that
but,
everyone hidden information writes a name or something. Very often it's a famous name or some character or something, or fictional mostly, or public figure, and write it on a piece of a card. Place it face down, pass it to the person on your left. Everyone does that, and then what happens? You take that card without looking at it, you hold it up, and then so you don't know what's on your card, right? So then what you do is that you ask questions to try and figure out who you are. Yeah, and depending
Okay,
on
yes,
the
I played it. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So it's a pretty common like party game and stuff like that. And this is the only other case of that game that mechanic being used, whereby you don't know who you are. The general idea is you don't know who you are and you try to figure out who you are. There's a bunch of IQ puzzles that are very similar to this. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but like there's one that like involves like people wearing hats, like there's like people like you're the last person of four prisoners wearing hats, and you have to figure out the color of your hat, kind of thing.
Yes, but that one has a solution. So
Yeah, correct. But the principle is very similar. It's
or heads up also, right? I think which the
yeah,
element in the
correct.
game.
It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same mechanic. It's just used in different places. And yeah, and it's the only case of these mechanics being used, like quote unquote used, that I've actually actively seen. So yeah, so not many users of it because it involves a lot of you guessing who you are.
I mean, I do want to state that even though it looks similar, I think there is a slight difference because in Hanabi, your information is now everybody else's hand. It's like you have one big mega hand, right?
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, it does look similar in the sense you don't know what your hand is, but you are also making guesses and doing your let's say your discrete actions based off other people's cards. And I think that's where the interplay comes in because based on what you are playing or what you're saying, the other person can also extract information from your discrete action, which that itself is really cool.
It is. But I'll be honest with you, because of how unique.
Cool mechanic.
Yeah, it definitely is. But because of how unique it is, there's a part of me that absolutely hates it. like only because of how impossible it is to use it in any other context. Like which other game is ever going to use this? It's either
Sounds like a challenge.
it probably is. Like there are faint variations of it, but like nothing comes close. Nothing comes close. So yeah. So it's a very, very interesting mechanic. There's one that
Are you saying that?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna ask. Are you saying that this mechanic is kind of like in its ultimate form already? Like it's not really possible to make it even better, that sort of thing.
I'm going to answer the question in the same way I usually do with a lot of these kind of questions, which always to play it out, you know. So ask yourself this question: like Hanabi's mechanic works because you're trying to build sets and you're trying to watch what your opponents are playing, so that you can try to figure out whether they're playing to you or for themselves, you know, that kind of thing. So they're trying to see whether you're going to be able to make sets and everything else. It is a sort of a game of blind man's bluff in some weird way.
Yes.
Right. So there's that. But the thing is that instead you get a little bit more complex when the cards are no longer a fixed set of cards. That means basically you can have any combination of cards possible in the entire metaverse, right? Then that information becomes impossible to assess because you don't know the possible variations involved. You can see what your opponents are using, but that doesn't mean you know what you're using. And the thing is that your own variations, right? Even though you even though you build your own deck and you know your own variations, assuming that you know your own variations, you don't know what's available there, and your opponents are not going to know how to play your deck in any meaningful way, right? To lead or mislead you in any meaningful way. So Hanabi's simplicity in terms of its tiles and in terms of its cards, because it's a matching game, is necessary as part of its to make the mechanic work. I just cannot imagine a case in which by that same play, right, can be possible in a more complex card game or in a trading card game or any other card game whereby you build your own deck, for example.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah. So but the thing was, I was going to go into though, like which is sort of this. I have this love-hate thing, which is with alternate win cons.
Ooh. Controversial.
Yeah, I know, right? And I love
yeah.
I love bringing this one up because Magic the Gathering has a long history of alternate win cons. Partially because they know that they sort of use it to sort of spice up the meta from time to time. Like, hey, everyone's smacking everyone to death. Like, it's been too long. They're doing it too often. Let's do something a little different, you know, that kind of thing. Then occasionally they come up with something that's a little bit more different or a little bit more interesting. Sometimes it's on a single card. Sometimes it's an entire mechanic on its own. But like one game that I've been told but I've never played, and a lot of people have testified it to me. They've literally told me, like, Jared, you should totally play this game. Is Legends of the Five Rings. Have you ever played?
I've heard about it, but you can tell me about the rules as I Google it.
Yeah. I don't have a very strong grasp of it as well. And I'm probably gonna get really angry letters if any Legend of Five Rings people like message me, watch this video or listen to this podcast. But basically, L5R has by default 3 different win cons. By default, 3 different win cons.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is known from the start. Like everybody knows that there are these 3 win cons. It's not something like I make my deck and I suddenly have a win con. That's
right.
different.
Right. Exactly. It's not. It's by default you already have 3 different win cons. And then, which by itself stands out because most games only have 1. I'm not talking about decking out, by the way, because decking out is a very different, like, it's a default. I'm just talking about like the real proper, like, you know, win con kind of thing. So L5R actually has 3 by default. And then after that, there are sub-win cons on top of that, apparently, which at least my friend has, the way my friend, if my memory serves me right, sums up to about, like, consistently about 7 win cons in a cycle, like in cycle at most of the time. 7 different win cons. So part of the game involves you trying to figure out, like, hey, is he trying to win with this or the other thing? Which which is interesting. I look. It is a regret of mine that I've never been able to play L5R. I was playing at a time when L5R was still around, but I'm kind of poor. I didn't come from a rich family, so I could only play one TCG at a time. Like I literally bought one booster pack every week, and anything else I either like won in tournaments or I traded my way up, like trade my way up. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
or borrowed from friends. Be like, hey, I want to try out this deck. Can you borrow me the cards? And yeah, that kind of.
So is it still around?
No,
Oh, it's still around.
Well, not exactly. So LFG. Sorry, is it LFG? Is it LFG? What's the
LFR.
no, 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 no,
right?
no. What's the company's name already? I suddenly can't remember.
Fantasy Flight Games.
Yes, correct. FF, yeah, FFG. Fantasy Flight brought it back. They bought a bunch of games from like the Richard Garfield era, like the old original first starting Richard Garfield eras, and like just revived a bunch of them. So Netrunner was one, L5R was another, Arkham Horror was a revamped version of a more complicated board game. So they did a bunch of these kind of things, which they did really well, by the way. I also really strongly recommend Arkham Horror if you like story-based card games, which is something just very, very different. Like if you play trading card games too much, yeah, it is. It's really, really fun. If you've played like trading card games too much and you hate the competitive scene and you go like, oh my god, I just don't want to play with assholes anymore. Play Arkham Horror. If you get assholes, you're more justified to kick them out of the room than playing Magic.
Love it.
Yeah.
Can I maybe throw in something a lot smaller to the mix now that we are talking about all these like big games and
Sure.
CCGs?
Sure.
So I want to add something that you actually don't have in the list. It's actually called Tussie Mussy.
I have never heard of it.
Yeah, so it is a Euro game. And it is very simple. There are only 18 cards in this entire game. 18. And it works like this. There are different colored flowers. And you want to give a flower arrangement to your friend, right, which is the other player. So what happens is you draw 2 cards from the deck each time. And then you place one card face up of your choice and you place the other card face down. And then the other player would choose which one to take. So he can either choose to take the face up or the face down. And you just take the other one that's not chosen by the other player. So you determine the orientation, he determines who gets what.
Yeah.
And I thought that when we talk about like what are card games, I felt that the game is so small and simple, and the mechanic perfectly reflects like a lot of the things that we talked about in a nutshell. There's randomness, there's a sense of agency, imperfect information, right? Information management, and then at the end you would basically score points according to like the flower arrangement that you have, literally the 4 flowers that you've drawn.
Funny thing is like if you think about it, that's actually a thing in Magic itself. Like there's a bunch of cards that do that. I can't recall the cards off the top of my head because I was thinking of one specific card. But yeah, we have a bunch of cards in Magic that just do that.
Right. Of course, I'm sure there is. I think for me, it's more like, again, it boils back to me always like looking for ways to introduce people into card games, because there's something I think about a lot, like how do I get people not so intimidated. And I feel like Masi is like a good like way to get people, like I can imagine someone playing Tassi Masi and then when they play Magic they have the same reaction as you. I had that experience in Tassi Masi, right? And then now Magic doesn't seem so intimidating anymore. Maybe not so much.
Send me a link for that one. I definitely think it would be fun to add it to the description of this video. Thanks,
it's not expensive too. No.
By the way, just to be clear, I have no objections to simple games. Like one of my favorite board games, quote unquote board games, is Animals on Animals. It's the funniest thing ever. I'm actually very surprised at how it is the dumbest thing ever. It's a kid's game. I'm always amused at how how amused I am about it. It's basically this game where you get a bunch of wooden blocks that shape like animals, and everyone has like your only goal is to stack them up.
Oh,
Yeah. And the pictures on Board Game Geek, if you ever find them, are the funniest thing ever. Like how obscenely difficult they've stacked it up. Like it's just hilarious, and I love doing that with me and my friends. Like a bunch of us, we just like we're playing like the craziest amount of balancing, just trying to figure out something like that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
that's amazing.
Yeah, it is a
It's
lot of fun.
almost like a toy.
It is exactly right. So it's like, is this really a game? Yeah, but it is. It is still a game. There is a win con to it, and there is a proper thing, but it's a very physical game. Yeah.
Right, right.
Yeah, but we're talking
I
about card
love
games
it,
today.
and it.
It's yeah,
But
it's
yes,
really cheap. But we're talking about
I
card
mean,
games today.
hey, it's card stacking a card game. You know, if I make a pyramid of cards, is that a card game?
Yeah, no, definitely
You
not.
know,
No, definitely not.
let's debate about that.
No, that's definitely not. I by the way, anyone who's watching, if you guys have any questions, or you guys anyone like chime in with your own favorite mechanics, or like the term I was using, like beloved or behated mechanics, feel free to like jump in, and we'll make a thing out of it too. But yeah, I felt like I would be a bit remiss if I didn't bring this one up, because every time we're talking about card games, I do want to bring in a little bit of history. And a little bit of fun tidbit that I want to bring up, which I brought up in our Discord chat, in our private Discord chat, the planning chat, was about the history of Hearthstone. And I was asking, did you know that there was a World of Warcraft TCG?
To which I did reply to you in Discord that I did know, and I had a few cards, like literally just a card, not even like
Yeah.
a full deck,
Yeah.
given to me by a friend who knew I loved Hearthstone.
Yeah, but have you ever seen
yeah.
people? Have you ever seen people who actually play the World of Warcraft TCG?
No, I have not. So maybe that's the thing that you can tell me all about.
Right. So basically, you're playing Hearthstone on a physical form. I'm not even joking. You remove a lot of random mechanics, like because it's a digital form that they could get away with. But you essentially had a bunch of characters. You had heroes, which were actual characters because you don't have a playing hero. I think it's been a while, and everything has a HP. Everything has damage that is persistent, and you would spend mana that you would generate either by using a card in your hand, place it face down as a mana card, or you actually have like proper mana cards as well. So by getting mana screwed in World of Warcraft was really really hard in WoW TCG. To some people that's a good thing. I beg to differ. Very different thing. One of the things that just as a side note, Equis is not here. He's with his family and everything else. But there was one point he was talking about was I can't remember what's the term he used, but there was one mechanic that he feels like he's not particularly fond of. I think it was persistent growth. Was it? I can't remember what was the term he used. Can you check? Do you remember what was the term he was using? Basically, there's this phrase he used which describes it really well, which was basically stuff like Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra that has this sort of like
mana.
Yeah, that mana that just you can guarantee that you'll get it kind of thing. So it's a very stagnant growth for the most part. I can't remember what's the term he used, but basically that was what he's talking about. Quick aside. But coming back to World of Warcraft, so yeah, you will be playing pretty much the same thing. We had a lot of trappings that were very Magic-esque. As per Blizzard, they would reference a lot of like the more successful stuff really heavily and try to take their own spin or try to fix things that they think are problems. And sometimes doing very well, and sometimes doing very badly. Heroes of Storm, anyway. Yes. Yeah. I'm sorry, man. I know people who actually like Heroes of the Storm, but I'm sorry, man. No, you're in the minority, man.
I'm in the neutral camp. I think it's cool to see some of my favorite Blizzard franchise heroes be fighting against each other.
Yeah, that's.
But as a Dota-esque game, I'm quite disappointed in it overall. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. But yeah, so So I've roughly painted the picture for you for World of Warcraft. So do you know what's the biggest problem with it as a physical game?
No, as in just based off the description that you're telling
Yeah.
me. No, what is it? What's the problem? Is it the mana?
No, it's not. The mana is easy because you can still represent and control it using cards. So you can tap and do all that kind of stuff. So it's easy to keep track of and it's easy to maintain to some degree. There's a visual component for it and it's very easy because it's all using cards. Huh? Yes, that's exactly
Is it
it.
that?
Yes, that's exactly it.
Oh, seriously? Why not just use dice and then
Yeah.
Well,
No, you got that. So that's what most players did. But how big is your board?
that's true.
Everything has persistent damage. Everything has persistent damage. So every
And if I were to recall the UI, there's no. I don't think there was a way for you to track damage as well.
there is
Like,
correct. So everyone I know that was playing World of Warcraft, every time they wanted to play, they would sit down with a bucket of dice. And I wasn't even joking about it being a bucket of dice. You'll be using more dice than most D&D games.
interesting.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it would just be like just to log the damage that's on your characters.
Oh, yeah, that would be a nightmare. And did it still have that like 7 million limit at a time at least?
I don't
think that
I don't remember. I really don't remember. It's been a while, but I don't think it even had that. So you could go more. And so congratulations if everything got 1 damage. Die.
hilarious.
Yes, best fun.
But you brought up the persistent mana mechanic that I brought up. I would love to debate that. I think that's a hot topic. That
Okay,
we should
Ken,
talk about.
let's do it.
Yes.
You first.
Okay. Are you for or against it? We need to state our stance, and maybe let's do like a debate thing. So we'll take opposite stances, even if we are on the same side. So are you for or against?
I am actually against.
Against persistent mana.
I'm leaning towards against. Yeah.
Okay, great. Then I'm fine. I'm leaning towards for. All right.
Okay, cool.
Let's debate. Okay.
All right. You want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
The house may start. Speaker, please.
All right. So one of the biggest problems about persistent manas, right, is that it leads to a flat curve. For the most part, when you do persistent mana, you're disincentivized from doing anything to help you expedite the mana. And it gives the designer a lot of control, but it removes that control from the player. So basically, if say for example, if I want to play cards that give me extra mana boost, and it only gives me extra mana boost, alright? I can't do that anymore. And you are disincentivized to designing cards like that because doing that in a case where the mana growth is persistent and guaranteed, right, makes no sense. It spoils the curve that you are trying to maintain and control. Yeah. It helps the players. I don't doubt that it helps the players' progression and simplifies and streamlines the progression a bit, but it also heavily pigeonholes what the players can do. It also creates a lot of moments whereby in a case, right, let's say for example, if you play Magic, right, it also creates a lot of moments, right, whereby I can't do a thing where I balance between land and everything else, land and effect cards, so to speak. In Magic, at least, right, because land is a thing, yes, getting land in late games are not fun. Fine, or whatever. But the fact is, right, not like if you're playing control, you have ways to compensate for it, and dead cards in your hand, right, are still great bluff tools. So there's a bit of like gameplay involved in there. It's not completely like void of meaning. There are also mechanics that use cards put meaning into cards inside your hand. So those can be used as fodder for those kind of things. So it's always better to put that control into the player. Alternatively, conversely, right, as if you don't want so much mana, if you're playing a RDW, right, having a consistent growth just makes it frustrating for me because I'm now suddenly pigeonholed by that, or like it's just it's like for what, that kind of thing. Sorry,
Mm.
red deck wins is a really bad example, by the way, because strictly speaking, a persistent growth actually benefits red deck wins. Red deck wins, but
Yep.
it does take a bit away from your deck design and that kind of um, satisfaction from finding that balance between your land and your effect cards kind of thing. But I think
Mm.
that for a lot of people is not enough of a factor, you know. So yeah, so I'm
Mm.
not going to fault it
Mm.
if you don't think that that's a strong point, but definitely feel like what it does is that it gives the designer more control, but you take the control away from the player. That's the trade-off that you're doing most of the time. So yeah, so
Mm.
players are just like, oh, okay, I guess this is just how it is.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so I think my neutral, like, if there was a neutral stance, right, it would be like, oh, it depends on the target audience, right? Like,
Right.
for if you, as you said, if you streamline it, it's easier for beginner players because it's also one element that you remove.
Yeah.
I think that would also explain why, like, I mean, my reference point would be Magic and Hearthstone, where in Hearthstone, the minions tend to be statted better, even as a 1 mana or 2 mana, because then it allows, since it's the mana is bound to reach maximum over time,
Right.
which means that late game decks are always going to be a thing. Then you need your early drops to be stronger, so the aggro has a better chance of
Right.
actually winning. So, however, I think again, one of the biggest reasons why I started off with Hearthstone and not Magic first was because of Mana Screw. Like Mana Screw, yes, we all hate it. But Mana Screw when I first started out was just such a turn off for me. And I think it also boils down to like where you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I was a Yu-Gi-Oh player. I played very competitively. I played Pokemon competitively as well. And in both of those games,
Okay.
the quality of the game is debatable. I'm not going back to those games again. Let's just put it that way. But
What?
okay.
I
Anyway,
enjoyed both games thoroughly.
yes, but from a game design standpoint, I feel like there's a lot of things that I can attack right now about those games. But
Yeah,
we're not gonna.
yeah. Okay.
But I'm just setting the context, right? Like
Right.
coming from those games where Pokemon literally is you can play your entire deck on turn one. Yu-Gi-Oh!
Really? They allowed that later?
To some
Okay,
extent
cool.
as
Holy
well.
crap.
But I never had this thing where okay, I admit that you can lose to randomness, right? Like you top that a raw card and you lose. But I think it's extremely, extremely feels bad when you can't even play a single card, right? We like part of the fun is having things to do. And sometimes you can say that, oh, then you just build your deck such that you have a higher chance of, blah, blah, blah. But the point is, it can still happen. The fact that it can still happen, right? It really sucks. And in a tournament setting, that's even worse, right? When you know that your chances of that happening, yeah. So, I mean, you can say, oh, but that's a part of life. I mean, for me, I am a chess player who likes everything to be like manageable and controllable. Card games are already like a far cry from that because there's randomness. I hate Magic's like that moment of Mana Screw. That really pisses me off. That having said, now I'm a full-time like Magic player. I exclusively play online right now. So I mean, go figure. But that's my argument against Mana Screw. Sorry, oops. Against the lens system. Yeah.
No worries. I perfectly understand and respect that because I've been on a fair share on the receiving end of it, and I recognize that it's one of the weaknesses in the system. We do want our games ideally, to be based more on strategy, like conscious decision making, rather than anything else. At the same time, one of the biggest lures and like satisfactions from card games, which I myself have learned to appreciate a little bit more in recent years, is the thrill of being able to build your own deck and recognizing that it is working like a well-oiled machine despite its variations and everything else. Like there's a lot of satisfaction in that. Yeah. So to put it very simply, if you're looking at a game where you just want to be tactical and you want to win, there's always chess, you know.
Mm.
But
Yep.
if you want a game with a little bit of randomness and a little bit more excitement and variety and diversity, then that's where you come to card games, you know.
Oh, I was gonna say do your own startup, but I guess that works as well.
Do your own
Um,
startup.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Like, yeah, I've never actually asked. Like, I mean, how many card games have you worked on since you started?
You mean for this company,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
when I started, like
Oh, no.
as a
So, I guess let's do that as a whole. I think it's a little bit fun if talking about it that way, and then we can talk about your company.
oh man, I don't know. I can't. I mean, I don't know. I have like notebooks filled with them. I have in my office. I have barang. I have like 4 or 5 bags worth of cards, like prototypes. Like it's just a lot of wasted paper and chopped down trees. Way too many to count. Um, but I mean, as of this company, unfortunately, not that many because
Mm,
to me, the type of games that we designed tend to be more of like workshop training, right?
mm,
Teaching things like leadership, empathy,
mm,
etc., etc. And somehow, I think card game mechanics don't translate very well. The
mm,
only one that worked pretty well was when I was working at Civil Service College, and I was designing a game for citizen engagement. I actually used Netrunner's action economy mechanic as the
mm.
base for the game, because the idea was you're supposed to play as like different Singaporean citizens of like different backgrounds, and
Oh no, that's not the same
you
game.
had different. Sorry.
No, there was this Singaporean game that came out a couple of years back, which was done like with I think I can't remember what it's called anymore. I actually had a deck of it in Malaysia because I took it back with me.
Is it
But
Singaporean Dream?
no, it wasn't. It wasn't the card against humanity thingy. But it was what was it? It was showcased. I think it was tied up with MinDev or something. I can't remember what it was already. Yeah, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but yeah, it was done by this local designer. I really can't remember for the life of me what it was anymore. To be frank with you, my impression of the game
Mm.
wasn't very fantastic because my standards are ridiculous. I'll be honest with you, my standards are ridiculous when it comes to card games. And yeah, it's yeah, I was just like it probably wasn't the one that you're talking about.
No, this was something that we worked on internally within the team.
Mm,
So it's not even released yet. It's still in its development stages.
mm,
But I left while it's developing. Anyway, and the point was like you're a citizen and you're supposed to reach your own personal goals, right? So if you are
Isn't that Singaporean Dream?
youth at yeah, well, kind of, but in this case, it's a bit darker. So, for
Mm,
example, we had a youth at risk character, and his goal was to quit smoking.
mm,
And if he didn't quit smoking, he basically burned like $3 every single like round. So it was a goal that needed to be completed because he's the only one with a demerit goal. But anyway, and so the action economy mechanic was actually pretty good in helping these director level people who have never played card games in their life to be like,
mm,
I can do
mm, mm.
3 things in a day, right? Because I only have limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Oh, I can spend time to go and work and earn money, right? Which
Mm,
is basically the one you spend 1 click, you get
yeah,
$1.
yeah.
It was very easy for people to logically connect it to their um, actual day
Yeah,
life
yeah.
cycles. And I mean, that's one of the games where I felt that okay, the card game mechanics did work well for that
Mm,
category of games. But other than that, everything else was basically for my own leisure and to somehow find my way of
and
creating the next Magic the Gathering or Hearthstone. And I think I remember distinctly that. Do you remember there's this one game where um, you summon creatures onto a board?
mm,
Like it was a board. I can't remember what is it called. It was a digital game. It's kind of like Farrier in a way, but this one was like on a square
Athenion.
grid. Maybe I think so. And I literally came up with my own version of the game like around the same time. So when it came out, I was just like, oh shit, they did it first, you know, that sort of thing. And then I
just
think
to
the
double
game,
check, your cards are always square. You attack in very specific directions, right?
oh
No, it's different. Okay, okay,
no, maybe it's not.
okay.
But I just remember that at the time, um, I came out with the game and I was like, oh, this game's gonna be awesome. And then they released it, and then as a young game designer, I'm like, oh shit, now I'm never gonna get that $1 million contract anymore. And then the game didn't do well, and then the game closed down as well. So
Oh,
I'm just like,
okay.
oh,
Okay, then I really don't know
yeah.
because Athenion is still around, but it lost my interest very quickly as well because it has a problem where the board mechanics makes it really difficult for you to come back from. Like if you lose, yeah, it's on my list that I actually posted previously.
Oh,
Yeah, it's actually
oh,
yeah, it's actually pretty good for what it's worth. It's a good study. It's a good point of study, and it's actually in fact the first iteration of it is actually first time I've seen something like this was actually in a physical game in Thailand, actually. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was done by a bunch of Thai people. I can't remember the original name of the Thailand version of the game, but Athenion appears to be Thai based as well, so I think it's the same company. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, but
Hmm.
basically, the idea is that you play cards, and the way the cards drop is that the cards themselves they have like attack directions, sort of very specific attack directions depending on where you place, and then at the end of every turn they will attack in those directions. Like including your opponent's
Hmm.
cards, they all attack in the same those directions, and then like there are a bunch of mechanics that makes it a little bit different and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, so it's a pretty interesting card game. But what happens is that if you ever find yourself in mid to late game and you're on the losing end, there is no coming back to it, and you just have to just play through to die, which is not fantastic.
Hmm.
I don't like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm. Wow. Sorry, I'm just like looking through all the pictures.
yeah,
Ooh,
it is
cool.
pretty cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
very nice.
I have a very long history of card games
So
in
would you promote this game?
I am already am, but as I said,
Oh, so are you recommending this game? Sorry,
I
would you recommend anybody?
if you've never played anything like it, it is interesting. It's fairly fun for what it's worth. The
Hmm,
only problem
I see.
is that like as I said before, the mid and late games, if you are losing, you are not coming back from that.
Right, I see.
Yeah, and the sad
Okay.
truth is that it just gets steeper and steeper and steeper. It's a snowball effect after a while, and you have no way of
Right.
coming back, and it's just shit. Very few games ever have a comeback. Very, very few.
I just recalled the name of the game I was trying to talk about. Duelist
Oh
with a
God,
Y.
Lyst is it?
Yeah, Lyst.
No, I've not played it.
Duel.
No, I've not had a
Yeah.
pleasure. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, when it came out, because I was a fan of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and
Mm,
that really like gave me like card game meets Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, and that was the game that I was also trying to create. So,
mm,
um, yeah, just for me, the blending of the board and the card was
yeah,
interesting to me. Um, but I remember when I was playtesting my game, you can tell that the card game enthusiasts are all like, yeah, I really like this. But then anybody else is like, wow, card and board very complicated. You
yeah,
ask
yeah,
me
yeah,
to
yeah, yeah,
calculate two things.
yeah.
Um,
I tried doing that exactly as well. I actually tried that as well, and it did not work. It was shut down really, really quickly. Because at the time, my first playtest group was a bunch of non-card gamers, and
ooh,
wow, it tanked so badly. Like even from the way they reacted to it, I was like, no, this is not gonna work. This is not gonna work. Yeah,
mm,
it was just too much information to grasp for them. Even the phases for them, like because you have two elements to play through, so you want your turn phases to be able to compensate for everything. Like you need to manage everything. Even that was too much for them. They cannot uh, basically support that amount of cognitive load. I'm not saying they're stupid. Please don't get me the wrong way. Like, it's not like
No,
I'm
no,
trying to
no,
be.
no, no.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm just. This is for the benefit of anyone else who's listening. I'm not trying to say they're stupid. Okay, because I know I used the term cognitive load, right? But no, it's not. It's about whether you have become inoculated to the kind of mechanics that card games used. It is a form of inoculation. You get numb to it. You get used to it. And if you're not familiar with it, you don't realize how numb or used to it you've become.
Well, I think rather than using the word numb, I think it's more like we have already front loaded all that
Yeah,
information.
Correct. Correct.
Right. Yeah.
Correct.
So
That's a better way of phrasing it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Sure.
lot to do with, like, as I said, like it's like you started off with the mechanics scry, and I thought it was really good an example. That's how, like, something so simple, right? When you want to word it in a way that no one can misunderstand on a piece of card, it's actually pretty hard. It's actually pretty hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I think it's interesting they brought that up. One thing I actually like about Hearthstone, is actually the text. And then they don't always follow it, but I think there's a general rule of like the 3 lines, 6 words per line rule.
Mm.
Like that's really the maximum number of words you should contain on a card.
Understood.
And of course, you break that rule with Magic the Gathering and everything else, but I think this is more of like if you're trying to reach the general like player audiences, right? Then having that many words and
Right.
really does help in its simplicity.
Right.
And so I remember when I was designing the one of the card games, my challenge was how do I really condense a very complicated effect into 18 words. And I think that exercise itself is something that there's a lot to learn from that, and I think we should try to practice that more often. And I mean, that's why I really dislike Bushido like road game, because it's just like, are you kidding me?
Bushido
Have
games,
you?
yeah.
Yeah,
Bushido
like
games,
the
yeah.
Bushido, yeah. I remember playtesting one of their games, and I just got so turned off by.
Which one was that?
Not the anime. I can't remember. It has anime girls in it, which is probably like half of their games.
Half?
But
No, that's every game
like
they have.
but there was just way too much text on it, and it's not even like one. Like it's like here, and then it's also on the upside down, and then the side have. I was just so pissed off. And I'm like, okay, well, good for the people that like this sort of game.
Yeah. Bushido has a really, really bad history when it comes to card template management. That's at least the term I'm going to use. But do you know Magic actually has a rule of their own as well? A similar rule, but not exactly the same.
Ooh, share.
Magic is not allowed to have more than 7 rows of text.
Now I'm like, is that true?
Yes,
well,
it is
I
true.
guess you must, because the text size is quite fixed, and they can't exceed the box.
They have a variation. They have a variation of text size. When they hit the 7 row mark, the text size actually gets smaller. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. But
okay.
When they I know this very well because I applied the same rules when I was making my own card game. Yeah, and the rule I told my designers at the time was like, look, I'm going to be in charge of templating the terminologies we used. I regret taking on that responsibility because it wasn't perfect. But very often I would tell the guys, look, this is how I'm going to word it. It's taking up too much space. I think we have a problem. Are you sure you want to push for this mechanic? Because we can try rewording it again, but I don't know how shorter it can get. Like, so I'll basically go back to the guys and go like, can you shorten this to me? Or otherwise, I don't think we're going to print this. It's not going to make the print. I know what you want to do, but I don't think it's going to survive print. So yeah.
Yeah, and keywords are not necessarily the answer to the problem as well.
I refuse to use keywords, by the way. I tried my.
You want to share why?
Oh yeah. So it's because we're talking about mechanics, and I think keywords in some ways are, but it's just generically there. So keywords are like, you know how Magic uses keywords to sort of short form some of the rule effects and everything else, right? But the problem is that keywords are actually sort of a hurdle to starting the game. So as a rule, when we were starting the game, we were like, hey, look, we're going to do a bunch of what is in effect technobabble for players already. And then what happens is that we don't want you to, after reading the rules and everything else, still have to memorize our glossary to be able to play this game, you know?
So I wonder if, no, I get where you're going. I wonder if the way that this game that I played before called Ashes Rise of the Phoenix Spawn, I think. It's basically one of those like you pick a character and the character has a unique deck, right? And you run with it. I feel like for those they do use keywords, but that's because the keyword is used on every single card belonging to that character, right? So the way that you learn the different keywords is, especially because it's a two-player game, there's only going to be 2 keywords each time, and I think that helps, right? And so
Right.
you move on from one to another.
Right.
I think that could be a legit way to use keywords.
Well,
yeah.
Once again, to be fair, I accidentally had keywords accidentally. So I'm not saying that you're completely off. Like, I'm not saying that using keywords is always a bad thing, but you have to be very careful about how you do it and recognize that it's never the answer. Like, you have to be more disciplined about it. If you have, like, if you're a startup game and you go like, oh, I have 14 keyworded abilities. No, that's not a good sign. Even 7 is too much. I would even consider 7 too much. You can say 5? Oh yeah, no, 5 sounds good. 5 sounds good, you know? But I didn't even want to go there. I wanted to go even further. Like, but that was me lah. Yeah, because I kind of really wanted to make it as easy to approach. I was taking a lot of lessons from beginning Magic. So if you notice, like in beginning Magic, they had everything spelled out on all the cards. There was no keywording, no nothing, that kind of thing. So because we were a startup, I was like, hey, look, let's not keyword everything. Let's not burden players. Let's get them to start play first as quickly as possible, and then we'll introduce keyword maybe in the later expansions or something. Stuff like that.
Yeah, and which is why I guess they keep certain keywords specific to a set, right? The newer ones,
correct,
so that
correct.
you don't have to remember so many.
Correct.
Keywords.
So some are evergreen, and then others are like they're very selective with the keywords they use nowadays. I think they're like 2 keyword effects per color, and even then it's a lot for some people.
Counter is considered a keyword? No, it's just
counter is a mechanic. That's all.
It's a mechanic, right? So okay, then it's
but to be fair, that's a mechanic keyworded into the game of Magic. I still spell it out. Yeah, because I don't want to assume you've played Magic, because people are going to ask what the F is counter.
What counter means? Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so it's not a fair assumption. So I don't like you making those assumptions either. I'm quite sure I was a very difficult designer to work with my team. I'm quite sure a lot of them were like pulling their hairs out, like, oh my god, why are we so limited and bound by these limitations? And I'm like, yeah, I don't think I think the product has some charm as a result of that, and I think the product has some accessibility. I think a lot of people are not aware of how accessible the game is, right? Partially because a lot of people who try to review the game are coming out people with like a long history of card games, long history of card games or board games, and it doesn't help that because the game has a lot of sort of advanced concepts that you can normally find in a lot of other more trading card games. Like the idea becomes a lot more complex and daunting for some people to even touch it. It's a very weird mixed bag. So it's been one of those kind of things where I've been like trying to figure out like how could I have done this better. It's like, oh,
ain't that always the case?
Yeah. But yeah, so it is keywording is a very, very mixed bag. I think people need to be very disciplined about it. I've had the pleasure of watching a lot of people playtest my game through the duration of us developing the game, and it is true. Every time, every story you hear about how your game is, oh, hey, Leonard's back.
Oh, you guys are still doing this? I went
Yeah.
out for almost 2 hours.
No, you went out for 2 hours.
Oh, well,
Mm.
fuck.
We were waiting for you to come back, man.
Yeah.
We were just
That's
padding
awkward.
time. We were just padding time.
What are you guys discussing now?
So I was saying about how
Keywords.
yeah, I was saying talking about keywords and about how it's a very weird thing because technically speaking, this is like a lump of mechanics, right? But how it's used in card games, like a lot of starting designers like to use keywords as a shorthand, say like, oh yeah, people can get used to this and all that kind of stuff. No, they're forced to get used to it. That's why they have to. They don't necessarily like it. You have to be very careful when you use keywords. It does reduce text space, yes, but like you have to use it often enough for it to be meaningful. You know?
Mm.
So
I
it really
remember Runeterra when it first came out.
Yeah.
There was a mechanic. I honestly can't remember what it is. I need to open up the game to remember.
Sure.
But there was a mechanic that wasn't keyworded. But there was a mechanic. I think it was like 3 or 4 cards had it.
Yeah.
And then in a subsequent expansion or update, they turned it into a keyword.
Yeah, correct. So it's fine like when the mechanic becomes more prevalent that it becomes a keyword. I think that makes perfect sense. But like some I can't remember which one that Magic recently turned evergreen. What's the blue evergreen keyword already? The one where when you cast an instant, it gets +1/+1.
Oh shit. Temporarily, right?
Yeah, until end of turn.
Kung Fu. No, what's it
Kung
called?
Fu.
Don't Kung Fu.
I don't know why, but that image of Jeskai Elder just like came out.
Yeah, it was introduced during that set. So, but yes.
Okay, that one.
But yeah, no,
The Ama.
yeah. So that mechanic was around for a while, and then later it became evergreen.
Prowess.
Thank you. Yes,
Sorry.
thank you. We're going to play a bunch of like card game trivias here along the way. But yeah, so basically, it's not uncommon that mechanics become evergreen over a while. Like they become keyworded over a while, because they become so integral to the game, right? There's like, hey, we might as well keyword this to reduce the text space and stuff like that. People understand eventually. So it's not impossible. I'm just saying that if you're doing a new game, you should do this very, very carefully because you have limited cards, and odds are the keywords are probably not going to be used as often as you think they're going to be used. If it shows up on only one card or even just 3, you probably shouldn't do it as a keyword. You know, that kind of
How
thing.
the designers have approached it. Well, I agree with you, Jared. It's not real. But I also think it does depend on how the designers have approached it and how you understand it. But junior designers tend to keyword a thing and not think about the future design space and the scalability of it.
Yeah, correct.
You know, if they release one card, but they think, oh, this is a mechanic I will use multiple times in the future. It's just not within the scope of what I'm doing right now. It's just an introduction, sure, but you know, it takes a long time to figure that stuff out.
Yeah.
You know?
I have on that note, it's a very interesting point that you brought up. And I just want to bring this up as a bit of a trivia fun thing. And by the way, it's we're running like in 2.5 hours right now, so this is the second longest thing we've done so far. The first longest is actually my first session in Equis, which went for 3.5 hours.
Yeah, it's almost 3. Anyway, yeah.
Anyway, so here's a fun thing. So Hearthstone has retired a mechanic and a keyword before. They said basically we're not supporting this ever again. Do you have any idea what that keyword is?
Inspire.
No.
Oh, enrage.
Yes, it is enraged.
Yeah.
Do you know why?
What did they do again? Because I remember being at a time where like there was a warrior deck that was just broken and everyone hated playing it.
Right.
Yeah, so when
they
when the
degraded charge as
Yeah.
mechanic, right? They degraded charge. I think it was both a charge and enrage, where you could basically one turn kill a dude from full health. Because they had a mechanic where you could place down the character, enrage him several times while putting on charge, and it impacted the warrior's primary hero, Grom.
Oh, but now I think the previous enrage was as long as it's damaged. So it's like a
Yes, correct.
one-time trigger.
Correct. It's a one-time trigger, exactly. So it's a one-time trigger that said, as long as this minion is injured, or I think damaged was the choice word, this mechanic is on. It's a switch. And they removed it. Do you know why?
Yeah. Because they said that it didn't show up enough, right?
No, it was. My recollection of it was that there was a very broken warrior build that
Well-
enraged worked with charge.
Well, okay.
And the what's that? The undead dwarf, the one that created multiple dwarfs.
Right.
It's a combination of these three things.
Well-
You could create. There was a card that turned all damage, gave all enraged characters charge. So you could play an entire set,
No,
duplicate everything.
Yep.
Something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, but interestingly, in the official statement, it wasn't. Jedi's answer was actually closer, but I actually want to talk about very specifically why that wasn't the case. Why that was the case? Because even in the explanation, they didn't go into the reasoning, the design reasoning for it. Like, as in, they didn't play out the design space for Enrage. And I was just curious to know whether it's apparent to you guys, if you think about it right now, like given your history with the game or your knowledge of the history of the game and everything.
No.
It was a very. I mean, there was some neutral minions that had it, but it was mainly on warriors, which is fine. Like, there are some keywords that are only on certain classes, like combo, for instance.
So
because you can. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. So I was just going to say, like, to be clear, they still kept the enrage mechanics. It's just that they never, they stopped supporting it in the sense that, like, they removed it as a keyword. They left the abilities back in. They just spelled it out to exactly what it does. So it's not to say they removed the effect of it. They just said, I'm not going to keyword it anymore.
Is it because it can be explained in a few words, which is when this minion is damaged?
No, that's not it. The reason, actually, if you think about it, is exactly what Equis was trying to lead to earlier, which is the design space involved in Enrage. Because on paper, right, it makes sense that doing this would work. But if you play the game, you realize very quickly that because your turns are divided so cleanly, no one's going to attack your creature, right, to enrage it. If I know that it is enraged and it needs to be killed, it is going to die that turn. So the only time enrage mechanics, right, really do matter is if A, you have something with a huge caboose, which makes the cost really heavy, and most warrior class just won't play it most of the time. So it basically you're basically creating dead cards. Nobody likes it. That's number one. Or two, you create stuff with really small butt that has charge, which is what Equis was getting at. Like, the only mechanic that you can play with Enrage at the time was if you could charge, get it Enraged in the same turn, and use it to smack ass.
I think Enrage wouldn't work in Hearthstone, but it would work in Runeterra.
Okay, so sorry, Chocolips says, "Hi, Jedidiah, I'm your biggest fan." Lyria is asking how long this stream is going to go on for. I'm going to go ahead and say that I think at most we're going to probably do another half an hour at most. It is 1:24 a.m. where I am at, and at most, if we go another hour, it's going to be 2 a.m. and my housemates are going to scream if I continue.
I have to teach tomorrow, so we should end soon anyway.
Thank you guys very much for hanging out. Yeah, but yeah. If you have any more questions, but feel free to just come in and ask. Anyways, so the reason really why Enraged, it is true that it has very limited design space. And because you can't really make cards with that mechanic, right? When you think about how Hearthstone really is played at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a mechanic that wouldn't work in Hearthstone.
Correct.
It's a mechanic that can work in Runeterra.
Correct.
No, it's also a mechanic that wouldn't work in Magic, but it's a mechanic that can work in Runeterra.
Correct. So as I said, so yeah, that's giving Runeterra a lot of credit, but yes, in the end of the day, it just didn't work, and Hearthstone rightfully just went, you know what? Instead of keeping this cognitive clutter for no apparent reason, because you're not going to see it anywhere else, we're not going to use the mechanic anymore. We're just going to spell out the mechanic to you and just leave it at that. So
For
yeah.
sure. Wow.
So yeah.
I need to go back and look for that post. Like, why did I not like go into it so deeply? That's really cool. Thanks for sharing.
Oh, my pleasure. It is. I took a little pride in that actually because I actually wanted to write a long article about that, like really explaining why Enrage's mechanics don't work, like as in Hearthstone. Because I saw people's replies and I was like, no one's talking about it in this way, and I felt it was a huge loss. It's like, why aren't you guys talking about it in this way? Like, is it so obvious to you guys, or do you think that no one needs to know this?
Wow.
Yeah.
Maybe if I had written about it, I might have gotten that internship at Blizzard after all.
My
Yeah.
answer for this is most people don't think about design as a design. Most people think about design as an impact on their play.
Yeah. By the way, if anybody wants to hear more about Jedi, he actually has a separate podcast, which, once again, was the inspiration for this one. If I get a chance, I'll link it into the description when I upload this to YouTube, so like Glenn can get some extra creds and views on his podcast too.
I have a podcast too, but I don't do it that often.
Yeah, I want that link too.
It's a SoundCloud, so I don't know where it is. I'm gonna find it.
Looking forward to it. Okay, so yeah, we've covered quite a bit of stuff. We've been talking about card games for about like 2 hours and 30 minutes or so, with some speckled in rando stuff in between. So yeah, Leonard, I think I've been talking with Jedi for a while. Would you like to bring up a point yourself? Is there a mechanic in particular that you absolutely hate? Make this our last point, man. Make it a good one. Huh? Sorry?
I don't like the land mechanic, but that's a dead horse I will beat. 1/3 of your deck is boring. Sure, it's not as boring if you do dual lands or you have land draws and land screws, but 1/3 of your deck is boring. I don't like when the card that you have to play basically just sits on the table doing something like it's standardized. Like, and they tried many things to do it, like planeswalkers and the card try to do many things to make that. But the core premise of the game is that 1/3 of your deck is dull.
Yeah, so I was talking to Jedi about it, and I was like saying to him, I said, hey, you're not technically wrong. You're not technically wrong. But there are always use for dead cards in your hand in Magic, you know?
Yeah,
or if
I'm
not, you can.
not arguing for dead cards. I'm not arguing against dead cards. And I remember Ben once wrote that you need to design a bad card. And I remember that pissing off a lot of people at the time. But I agree with him. You need to design bad cards. You need to have an understanding what a bad card is. You need to have an understanding what a core card is. But I think people understand it less consciously than they do subconsciously. So with Magic, it's like you have everyone has a sort of understanding, the multiplayer, what a core trade-off is. Like 1 mana, 1 damage, 1 spell. I think 1 mana is 2 damage. I'm not actually sure what the balance is. But 1 mana, creature, 1/1. Land isn't that. Land is that 1 mana, right? Land is it's a flip of that. It's not the card itself. Land is a card that enables that to play. So I know you talked about liking variable resources, and I don't have a problem against that. I think variable resources are really interesting, but I don't like when the resources are built into the deck itself. Like,
Yeah. So the creators of Force of Will completely agree with you. If you ever played Force of Will, it's a trading card game from Japan. What I heard is that it's made by a bunch of like Magic players or Magic fans and stuff. Basically, it's like Magic, except that your lands are in a completely separate deck. So that's exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, and see, I think that's the thing about Magic is such an institution at this point in time that suggesting any changes to it is it's like,
so I don't disagree with you on a lot of facts. And look, Magic isn't perfect. There's a reason why I'm not playing actively anymore these days. But to Magic's to Magic's credit, and this is very specifically for my play experience. I'm a Johnny Timmy, and what that means is I tend to play with cards that do a lot of very funky stuff. Part of the thing about playing with cards that do a lot of funky stuff is that you tend to want stuff that allow you to discard stuff for effects. You know, because usually these effects are usually a bit strong. Having lands in those kind of cases is really nice because you don't have to think about what you want to discard. Like I don't have to make a decision.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think this is where, like, you know, where, like, because it's such a mainstay within the Magic's design already, that they have and Magic has really, really good, like, Maro is one of the best designers in the world, and they have attempted and successfully more often than not, actually no, successfully half the time, to include Magic within the land within the decision making of playing the card.
Yeah.
But it's still 1/3 a deck that essentially is doing that, right? And maybe I'm being idealistic where I like all my cards within the deck to have meaningful, be a meaningful choice for me.
Yeah.
But even so, right? Like there is an instance where, like, say, you know, if a deck is like 1/3 of the cards essentially say do 5 damage. That's it. That's entire card. Every other card is an interesting trade-off or interesting resource trade-off,
Yeah.
of course, right? But the primary card is, you know, your deck is 1/3 of your deck is 1/1 creatures that cost 1 mana. You're building to that. And I say 1/3 because I know there are people who can build decks out of like 10 land and then go nuts. And then still win games. Right? That's the Timmys and the Johnnies of us.
No, Spikes do that too. Spikes do that too, man. Spikes do that too.
If they can find a way, like if they could find a way to say, yeah, I don't need that much land and I will still beat you, that's a goal.
Yeah.
But it still ends up being 1/3 of your deck is dedicated to that. And it's part of the Magic's core, like, premise, like, and, you know, part of everything that it does, and anything else you do against that just, you know, would impact Magic so much. Magic's core, I think, compulsive scenario is the way the stack and the instances work, less about the way the meta structure in terms of the turn order works. So you always will draw 1 card, and you always will play land, right? And you can't change this. The minute you change this, it's not Magic, you know. But I don't like it.
Well, I take offense that you didn't tell my story. I put in a lot of effort choosing every single land art. You know, like I wanted to be pretty. You know, I wanted to reflect my personality. Okay, I'm an expression player. Okay, so lands are great for self-expression. There is that.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
That's a mechanic.
Yeah, but so there was this long weird look on my face half the time because, like, one of the first decks which I took to a Grand Prix, this was way before the 2000s kind of thing. Yes, I'm that old. Was a green rush deck that had a total of, if my memory serves me right, 10 lands. Yeah, there was 10 lands. It was 4 is it 4? Yeah, it's 4 Gaia's Cradle and 6 forests. That's it. Yeah, and how you compensated? You had Elvish Spirit Guides to compensate for some of it, and everything else was costed below 3. If not, it was it had an alternative casting cost like Invigorate. That would be, it was just there to like do stuff. So like like the whole deck, right, was meant to stomp you down really, really quickly. It was just built like that. And I think a lot of red decks these days, like red deck wins, right, they build their decks with like 12 to 15 lands, so it's like less than that. So it really depends on the type of decks that you want and how, like, what kind of stability you want to try and do. I've seen a lot of people recommend using like 24 lands, which is like when you have a higher mana cost curve kind of thing. But I used to play with 20 lands and a decent hand size, a decent selection of land searchers and stuff like that. So yeah, so it really depends on your...
I think it's a controversial topic, and I know I'm not winning favors.
Oh no. So look. I don't disagree with the hate for it. Like, as in, I understand where you're coming from. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of space, but that you mentioned, that Magic has sort of designed themselves, like knowing that that is a feature in the game. Yeah, so they designed to it, making sure that, oh, okay, hey, basically lands are a choice and a decision, but what they are is that they are the simplest choice and decision inside Magic. You know?
They are very much key. You know, they are key because depending on how you phrase it, but they are very much key of the deck building mechanic.
Correct.
Mhm.
Hi Black Vision. Welcome to the tail end of this thing. We're actually about to end. We're going through Equis's most hated mechanic, which is the mana system.
No, land mechanic. No,
Okay,
mana I
land
don't mind.
mechanic. Okay,
Land
cool.
mechanic, I don't mind.
Sorry, my bad. Yes, there is a break.
I concur. I hate it too. My most
Yeah.
hated
Yes,
mechanic.
I'm
in
here.
field.
I'm here trying vehemently to defend it. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's just that I think I've gotten used to it enough that I feel like it to talk about it in such a negative way without talking about its merits feels insincere. Is the way I'm going to use.
Well, and yeah, and to be fair, I'm being a bit glib about it, and I think part of the issue with land mechanic that Magic employs is it's a combination of multiple things for me, and why the land mechanics is just for me why I hate it the most. It's Magic's draw restriction. You get one card,
Mhm.
right? And Magic's way they ramp, right? You know, you get one card, and there is land there, right? So it is the simplest choice, but it's also a very, very complex choice because now you think about how much your deck is based on tutoring, how much your deck is based on mitigation of
Yeah.
that particular mechanic.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't like it. I don't enjoy that. You know, I'm not saying I often say this to a lot of designers. There is no good or bad design. There is design that works for the game that you're making or design that doesn't. You know, good or bad in context, but it's not good or bad. I don't like it. Doesn't mean it's a bad mechanic. I just don't like playing with it.
Yeah, well, I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy because I've seen some people abuse that philosophy.
Okay.
And there are some cases where there's actually clearly bad design, but let's not go there. That's not a topic. Yeah, this is that's a topic for another day.
There's no good or bad mechanics. There's good or bad design, but there's no such thing as a good or bad.
I suppose. So yeah. So all right. We have about 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes before we hit the 3 hour mark. We have a couple of extra people who's watching. If you guys want to ask questions, feel free to do so. But like, yeah. So far, I'm going to do a quick wrap up. If you have any thoughts or anything else you want to add, just quickly do it in the comments. But yeah. Just to do a quick recap, we talked today. In particular, we've talked about like variable win cons. We talked about oh crap, I'm actually Scry Mechanics. We also talked about
Persistent mana versus
persistent mana curves, like the one that Equis, unfortunately you weren't here because we brought it up as a topic. I think it would be really fun to actually have you around during that one, but it was just a topic I could not like let slide without talking about it. I thought it was really nice.
I wrote down to you that I'm ambivalent about it. I'm like, I think it works. Cool.
Yeah, but yeah. What's the other one that we talked about? A Hanabi mechanic as well, which is an interesting mechanic. But as I said, it feels like in the context of a card game, there's just so limited use, like possible limited use for it. For the reasons that you just don't have design space to work around it. And what I just can't remember. I'm brain farting like crazy, Equis. But thank God you're here. What was the mechanic that you mentioned on your first point?
Don't remember.
Oh crap!
Action economy.
Sorry. Yeah. I think that was it. I think it was
action point.
action point economy. Yes, exactly. We talked about that a lot. And there's still a lot of mechanics that we actually barely even touched, and I think even the ones we did, we just narrowly scratched the surface. There are a lot of ways. We were talking about draft mechanics to some degree as well, but we didn't really go in depth into it. I would love to talk to you guys more about games with draft mechanics, because part and partial because they are really really fun. Like Dominion's a huge aspect of it. Ascension's another one. My game.
Shard of Infinity.
Sorry.
Shards of Infinity.
Oh, I've not played that. But yeah.
Oh, that's actually the one I like the most.
But yeah, so yeah, my own game has a heavy draft mechanic. We didn't even and then we listed a whole bunch of other games also as well, and like we didn't even get to touch on things like Keyforge, which has a very different a monetization system that leads itself to a draft mechanic that is very different. So yeah, so there's a lot of stuff that we didn't really get to touch on. So I'm looking forward to actually being able to talk to you guys again about this topic. I think we should be trying to do a part 2 soon again, hopefully, at a time that's a little bit earlier. Because if you can't see, like, it's almost 2 a.m. where we are at. What time is it?
Sorry, what's the name of the
Alright.
game that you mentioned for the deck building game?
Shards of Infinity. There's an iOS of it.
Arts of Infinity?
Shots of it.
Oh,
Shots.
Shards of
Yeah.
Infinity. Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a stone play game. Okay.
Very cool.
Cool.
I would also absolutely love to get Jedi out someday to just like play test the game that I've been working on.
Ooh,
Yeah,
that
man.
too.
Yes.
Anytime.
After Chinese New Year, I think at this point would be a good time.
Oh,
Yeah.
you guys can go out and meet each other. How nice.
Yeah.
We can stream you if you want. Like I could put up a clip to hold up your hand. You know, like
Yeah,
We
that.
can use do you have VR? We can VR chat, you know.
It's like seeing other people, social contact. I don't know, I forget.
You have a family.
Yeah, that's so why I don't do it anymore. But yeah,
All right, guys. Okay, if there's no other questions, I think we're going to close it for tonight. We're running at 2 hours and 56 minutes right now. We're 4 minutes more to go. Do you guys have any finishing thoughts that you guys want to talk about?
Yes, I'm clicking the add to cart on the Shards of Infinity screen right now.
oh, that's fast. You could try the iOS version. Well, the iOS version's only got the core set,
Oh.
so it doesn't have all the extensions.
Oh, shit. Yeah, no.
Expansions do help, like many things. Except expansions do. I think Ascension that way to make expansions personally, but it's good. It's my favorite of that version.
That's nice.
So wait, the expansions are good.
Yeah, the expansions are good. But the core
Okay.
is pretty good.
Okay, got it.
That's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Unlike Ascension, it doesn't have like 20 different expansions that you get lost in. They only have a couple.
Awesome.
I think three expansions, 2 or 3.
All right. And yeah, because I promised this a bit earlier at the start of this stream, I'm actually going to try to listen through what we talked about, and I will try to link every game we've talked about into the comments of the YouTube video. So luck be with me. We've tried to figure out how long that list is. If you guys and hopefully it'll be a fun and interesting list for you guys to look into if you guys are studying for card games and stuff. It could be a very interesting journey for you guys. So yeah, so with that, I guess that's it for us tonight.
Yay.
God, let's do part 2 soon. All right, guys. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Oh, we can hang around for like 2 more minutes and make it 3 hours.
Do you? Okay, yeah, we have. Do you have anything else like you want to talk about for like 2 minutes?
I mean, I don't have anything in mind right now. I just wanted to hit the 3 hour mark.
It's like, no, I'm gonna just be able to hit this room. Okay, fine. I'm going to do.
What card games are you playing right now?
All right.
What card game?
Just in this, what card games are you guys playing right now? Because I'm playing Slay the Spire.
Okay.
But I've dropped off with Terra for multitude of reasons. What games are you guys playing right now?
Okay, I'll go first. So I'm still playing Magic the Gathering Arena. I just finished playing Ring of Pain, if you count that as a card game, which is not really the case. I kind of finished Grifflands as well, though I would say that Slay the Spire is still better. But I thought it was an interesting take on the mechanic. And then I just played Unstable Unicorns with my friends last week.
Yeah.
And that's always fun. Yeah.
I'm honestly between card games right now. The last one I played was LOR. Legends of Runeterra. Shortly before that was Arena as well. Magic the Gathering Arena. The sad thing is that these days, between Genshin and my own work, the only time I've really touched card games was to develop my own, like further develop and service my own. So yeah, so that's pretty much it. A bit sad, but yeah.
Well, I'm playing Stay is my in between game. I got nothing else to do. I'll play Slay. But last year I played this game called Monster Trade, which is a card game mixed with a tower defense, which I thought was really cool. I think I should try that. Yes, I could.
Cool, cool. Okay, with that we hit the 3-hour mark.
I don't know if Jedi went searching immediately, but it's on Steam.
I feel like Jedi is like looking through like for
Yay.
every game we've
3 hour
listed,
mark.
like every game we've tried to list out. It's like, oh yeah, wait, which one is this? It's like, oh, I'm going to like start looking at it
Yes.
right now. Yeah, which is really cool. I mean, I think that's good. Anyway, guys, okay, so I think this should be coming to an end to it already. Thanks, guys. Thank you guys very much for like spending this last 3 hours with us. Especially the two of you guys. I'm hoping that we can do this again soon. Let me know when you're up for it, and then we can start something again. Hopefully, we can give everyone else a bit of more heads up notice, and we'll start on time this time. I'm not going to be as ambitious to do that whole visual thing again, because yeah, that just created a bunch of problems for me. And and I hope everyone's and once again, this is the first time we've done this without any background audio. I hope it is a better experience for everyone. If it's not, please do let me know. Or if you think that there should be some other background audio but just not my crummy free jazz, let me know as well. I'll try and see what I can do about it. For now, I guess this is us closing in for the night. Thanks, guys. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Jared. Leonard.
Thank you, guys.
Adios.
Bye.